Our main protagonist's name is Xiai, and he is incredibly powerful. He could slay hundreds of massive monsters by himself, and it was an easy task for him. With a snap of his fingers, he could change day into night. People marveled at his skill. It would be more accurate to say that he was the strongest in the world. With a snap of his fingers, he could block out the sky. With a wave of his hand, he could pluck the stars. For him, it was nothing more than basic manipulation. But even with his immense power, there were people he couldn't save and events that couldn't be reversed. For example, his home planet had recently exploded. Another example, he once had a loving wife whom he cherished deeply. She always told him that if she ever found out he had found another girl, she'd kill him. But even the wife of such a powerful hero died suddenly. So, even though Xiai had been at the peak of power for a long time, he was still just an ordinary, strong, handsome character embraced by sadness. The whole world bowed down to him. Even the strongest warriors lowered their heads in the presence of his power. However, he was not satisfied with this. Our hero decided to give himself entirely to the cycle of rebirth. He wanted to change absolutely everything. Thanks to his power, he could afford to do so. In this life, he would once again follow the path of a strong, arrogant source. Xiai immersed himself in the cycle of rebirth, his memory covered in dust, his cultivation dispelled. Although he had already been defeated 100 times, in this era of eternal torment, he persisted on his path. However, at some point, things changed drastically. There were some who couldn't simply let him go. In fact, at the time, he didn't realize the gravity of the situation. We should go back a little to where Xiai's new path began. He was walking through the city, a branch in his hands, looking nothing like a powerful warrior. Xiai was glad to have finally escaped that cursed place. It had taken him an entire year, but he had managed to step out of the great void. His countless memories were scattered to the wind after being stuck in that place for so long. He had been forced to observe a series of very strange visions. Additionally, he still wasn't sure if he was truly a great celestial who had transmigrated into this body. If that was indeed the case, then joining a reputable school or sect and achieving greatness shouldn't be difficult for him. Meanwhile, many people were gathered around a gray-haired elder, coming up to have their potential determined. One of the men touched a magic ball and learned that he had the potential to become a celestial. Those with such potential were ready to accept great masters as their disciples. Xiai decided to be tested as well. He approached the honorable gentleman and asked if he could take the test. The old man pointed his finger at Xiai and turned to the man beside him, stating that from now on, he would never be like this beggar. The old man, with a long beard, then turned to Xiai and remarked that even though he appeared as a beggar, he dared to ask for a test. Without hesitation, Xiai stepped up to the magic ball. He offered his hands to it and thought that if he had true mental strength, he would immediately devour this crystal ball. As soon as he touched it, the ball began to emit incredibly powerful black magic. The old man was astonished, recognizing this as the power of impenetrable darkness. Could it be pure dark energy? The man standing next to him mentioned that it wasn't exactly like that. It was dark and light energy generating each other. Then, some others arrived and declared that it was the innate Grey Tao, the primordial essence. Xiai didn't fully grasp what they were saying, but did it mean that he was unbelievably powerful? A man who had been watching approached Xiai and offered him a large amount of spiritual stones if he agreed to join the Comet School. At the same time, a huge man with enormous muscles appeared and offered Xiai a spiritual stone mine if he would join him instead. A large crowd had gathered, and more teachers came, all wanting to recruit Xiai as a student. He asked them to calm down and not touch his clothes. He hadn't expected such commotion over him. He realized that possessing a primordial essence meant he was extremely powerful. Just then, two incredibly beautiful girls approached the crowd. One of them remarked that these famous people were fighting over her little brother. The other girl stated that their Dark Heaven Thirst School was also interested in recruiting him. Xiai asked what kind of school the Celestial Thirst School was. The people around him tensed up. How could they be here? One of the girls used her magic, which enveloped everyone nearby, placing them under hypnosis. Xiai seemed happy to see the girls and agreed to go with them, ready to join their school. He thought about how no one dared say anything bad about these beauties, which surely meant that the Dark Heaven Thirst School was very powerful and that he could become one of the best. The girls looked at each other and said it was a great choice. One of them cast a spell on Xiai, and they said they would take him to their school immediately. Xiai began to fall asleep as the girls explained that their school was far superior to third-rate ones. After a while, when half a day had passed, the people who had been enveloped by that magic began to wake up. It turned out to be the magic of oblivion. They continued with their business as if nothing had happened, though the gray-haired old man felt as if he had forgotten something extremely important. Meanwhile, Xiai started to wake up, feeling as though he had been working night shifts for a month. When he opened his eyes, he saw the beautiful girls in front of him. He immediately wondered where he was. As it turned out, he was in a cave in the middle of a forest. Was this really the school of these sisters? One of the girls approached Xiai and asked if he truly didn't know what the Dark Heaven Thirst School was. She came so close that Xiai began to feel uncomfortable. The girl then revealed that it was the Dark School of Dual Cultivation and informed him that a body that had reached primordial essence was ideally suited for dual cultivation. Xiai didn't realize what was happening to him. Panic surged through him, and he screamed, quickly jumping aside and asking the sisters what they were doing. The girls began acting even stranger, asking him what was wrong. The girl with purple hair explained that someone possessing a primordial essence could cultivate at lightning speed. She also took offense, saying that he could help others achieve dual cultivation and become stronger. The beautiful girls assured him that if he returned to their school with them, they would take care of him. It wouldn't be 3 days before their sect would squeeze all the energy out of him, draining him dry. These girls clearly wanted to taste him, and they hinted that if he was obedient, he might even survive. Xiai pleaded with them to stay away, but the girls only laughed, calling him a funny guy. They told him that if he started to weaken, they would help him recover. A girl in red clothes grabbed him by his clothes as he tried to escape, and Xiai desperately claimed that he was only interested in men. The girl warned him to be careful with his words, or something unfortunate might happen. The demonic girls continued, saying they wanted to taste him, and one of them began to move closer. Xiai thought everything was hopeless. He considered himself a disciple of the 5 things and 4 virtues, yet now, this great epic of his youth was turning into something terrible. Suddenly, one of the girls stopped. She felt something inexplicable. Another girl, waiting her turn, urged her friend to hurry. The beautiful lady let go of Xiai and pondered for a few seconds. She felt an incredible spiritual power surging inside her, uncontrollable and almost bursting out, though it was very pleasant. She turned around and started to run away, telling her sister she urgently needed to leave and start cultivating first. The energy had reached its limits so quickly that it was urgent to strengthen her spiritual boundaries. The girl with purple hair didn't understand what had happened to her friend and then looked at Xiai. Quickly, she pounced on him, hoping to experience the same effect as her sister. She marveled at how her sister had reached the limit so quickly, amazed by the power of the primordial essence. This girl, almost like a succubus, turned to Xiai and asked what would happen if she consumed him completely. Xiai, realizing the situation was about to escalate, began thinking about his parents, mentally apologizing to them that their son was about to become an adult in such an unexpected way. But suddenly, the girl fell silent. She didn't move for a while. Xiai opened his eyes to check what was happening and saw that the girl was sitting silently, her face turning red as she looked away in embarrassment. Xiai asked what was wrong, and the beautiful lady shouted for him to stay away from her, which was the opposite of what she just wanted. Then she started to run away, telling him to wait there because she would be back soon. Now, Xiai was left alone, confused about what had just happened and where the 2 girls had gone. He tried to leave, but suddenly, he was stopped by another gorgeous girl who grabbed him by the shoulder. She asked why he had tried to run away when they had just started. She seized him again and declared that this time she would definitely drain him dry. But as soon as she tried to bite him, she immediately fell to her knees, crawling away and calling out to her sister for help. Xiai, already feeling dizzy from the tension, saw the same girl with purple hair return and pounce on him again. He yelled for her to stop, and finally, the whole night passed. By morning, Xiai was sitting on the floor, feeling incredibly exhausted. The 2 beautiful ladies lay on the floor, also drained of strength. Xiai thought he couldn't take it anymore. He had expected something far worse, but in the end, just kissing throughout the night was enough for the girls to reach their limits. He checked to see if they were sleeping soundly and realized that although they hadn't endangered his life, it might have been because they were relatively weak. If what they said was true, then he would surely encounter stronger female members of their sect when he entered the dark school of heavenly thirst. Xiai, being a noble man, realized he didn't belong there and had to escape immediately. Before leaving, Xiai noticed rings on the girls' hands. They seemed to be illusion rings. Xiai took their rings, wondering if they might be the rings that accumulate energy from the ancient records of the Great Void. In that case, he decided to borrow them as a small fee for his troubles. Silently, he said goodbye to the sisters and quickly ran away from that place. He didn't know what he should do next. It was too dangerous to be alone. Perhaps joining some school or sect would make things easier for him. Nevertheless, the fact that he possessed the primordial essence had to be kept a closely guarded secret. After walking a few kilometers, Xiai suddenly heard someone loudly bang a mace on the ground behind him. He turned to see a huge, muscular man, a real mountain of muscles, ordering him to stop, announcing it was a robbery. Xiai asked if the man seriously wanted to rob him, explaining that he had just escaped a big mess himself. The hostile man told him to stop talking nonsense. Xiaoyi thought that bad luck must be following him, and wondered how unlucky he could get. His eyes glittered as he turned to the big guy and admitted he was in no mood for this. Then, to the man's surprise, Xiaoyi knelt down, begging the robber to spare him, showing everything he had and asking, "Big brother," not to refuse him this favor. The man with the mace shook his head, letting Xiaoyi know he didn't believe him. Xiaoyi insisted he had given everything he had and invited the man to check if he didn't believe him. The huge man then said he didn't want his money, smiling strangely, and hinted he wanted something else from Xiaoyi. Judging by the big guy's flushed cheeks and changed voice, Xiaoyi sensed that something worse than just a robbery was about to happen. Slowly, Xiaoyi began to back away from the man, his steps quickly turning into a run. As he dashed away, Xiaoyi thought that if he had known it would come to this, he might have been better off staying in the Heavenly Thirst sect. Xiaoyi had been running for a long time, with the man wielding the mace shouting at him to stop. The big guy couldn't understand how this little brother could run so fast. Even though he was a cultivator, he couldn't keep up with this ordinary kid. At one point, the big guy almost caught up to Xiaoyi and nearly struck him with his mace. Xiaoyi managed to dodge, but he knew he couldn't keep running forever. The huge man was trying to stun him, intending to do unspeakable things to him, and Xiaoyi realized that if this continued, the man would eventually catch him. Despite having run non-stop for about an hour, Xiaoyi didn't feel tired at all. He wondered if it was because of those sisters. He remembered they mentioned that a person with a primordial essence could help others refine and strengthen their cultivation. But for the bearer of the primordial essence, the cultivation speed would become lightning fast. Could it be that he had actually grown stronger after their kisses and touches? The bearded man chasing him noticed that Xiaoyi's breathing hadn't faltered at all. It remained steady even after such a long run, as if he wasn't tired in the slightest. Frustrated, the muscular man decided to throw his mace at Xiaoyi, shouting that his chi retreat skill wouldn't help him escape. He warned Xiaoyi that if he didn't stop obediently, he would force him to. The man made such a powerful throw that his mace shattered a tree, but Xiaoyi managed to dodge it. He hid behind another tree, and the muscular man, outraged, demanded to know where Xiaoyi was hiding. Xiaoyi thought it was fortunate he had dodged in time, otherwise he would have been killed. He wasn't sure what to do next, but suddenly, he noticed that the rings he had taken from the sisters were reacting to something. If he had indeed grown stronger, it was worth seeing what else he had managed to acquire. Xiaoyi began to look through what he had taken. There were various items, but nothing seemed particularly useful at first. Then, he found some sort of mixture in a jar. He didn't understand what it was for. Just as he was examining it, the bearded man found him and shouted. Startled, Xiaoyi dropped one of the jars, though he managed to hold on to the other. The jar he dropped fell and shattered on the big man's head. Xiaoyi had no idea what it was, and he hoped it wasn't poison. After all, the jar had belonged to those two sisters, so he was sure it couldn't be anything too serious. When Xiaoyi read the inscription on the jar, it said, "Aphrodisiac." He thought to himself that if he couldn't resist, he might as well relax and enjoy it. But when Xiaoyi looked around, he was surprised to see the bearded man clutching the stump that remained after his mace had shattered the tree. The man seemed to feel an intense burning sensation for that piece of wood. Xiaoyi thought that these items shouldn't be left here. The Supreme Lord Lao and the Jade Emperor might at least find something useful here. After a while, Xiaoyi found some kind of pink stick. He thought it might be a good quality weapon that could be useful. He began to infuse it with spiritual power, preparing to attack his enemy with it. Xiaoyi rushed at the huge man, shouting at him for daring to try to rob him. He struck the big man on the head with all his might, hitting him right in the middle of his strange hair. Then, like a ninja, Xiaoyi bounced to the side, realizing he had dealt a devastating blow. The huge man fell to the ground, and Xiaoyi, relieved that his skill had proven superior, began to wonder what had really happened. He felt an incredible surge of power, as if every particle of chi in his body was relentlessly moving. Now, Xiaoyi was contemplating whether he should use this weapon again. He mused that even their weapons looked obscene, just the kind of thing suited for the dark Heavenly Thirst school. After an hour, Xiaoyi had gathered everything he could from the big guy. He told the unconscious man that if he liked to rob people, he should be prepared for the possibility of being robbed himself. Xiaoyi needed to reach a town or city as soon as possible and then figure out how to avoid further encounters with the Heavenly Thirst sect. Fortunately, he had managed to get some spirit stones to cover his travel expenses. He had heard that there were portals in the mountains, which would be the fastest way to escape. 3 days passed, and Xiaoyi arrived at the foot of the mountain where the School of Pure Morals was located. A guard stopped him and asked who he was. Xiaoyi greeted the guard and explained that he had come to become a student. The guard, however, sent Xiaoyi away, not even bothering to hide his disdain. He informed Siai that he didn't meet the school's requirements and needed to look at the enrollment criteria. His age was obviously not suitable, and as for the fourth stage of qi absorption, he didn't meet that requirement either. The guard pointed out that the minimum requirements were 15 years of age and the fourth stage of qi absorption. Those who didn't meet these requirements were told to leave immediately. There was also a promotion to register and receive a gift, but Siai wasn't interested. The guard quickly sent him away with harsh words, telling him not to return. Siai thought about how he had only just left 2 days ago, yet he had already reached the fourth stage of qi absorption. However, based on his appearance, he clearly didn't look suitable for the school. He began to think about what to do next. After some thought, Siai turned back to the guard to say something. He hugged the guard and discreetly showed him 2 small pieces of gold, asking if he really had a chance of getting into their school. The guard, seeing the gold, smiled and said that although Siai had reached the fourth stage of qi absorption, he lacked talent. However, as they say, limitations can be compensated for with effort. The guard then told Siai to wait while he went to call the elder, adding that if Siai wasn't accepted, it wasn't his decision to make. Siai thanked the guard profusely for his support. The guard assured him and thought to himself that he was very fortunate today. Thankfully, the pair of rings held a lot of valuables, otherwise he would have been in trouble. Without money, even a hero is useless. Suddenly, a short girl appeared behind Siai and sniffed him. Startled, Siai jumped back, bewildered by what she was doing. The girl stared at Siai for a long moment, and an awkward silence hung between them. After a few seconds, Siai asked who she was. The girl snapped out of her trance, greeted him, and introduced herself as Yuer. She called him senior student, which surprised Siai. When he asked why she addressed him that way, Yuer explained that she had recently joined the school and, since he was older, she called him senior. However, she added that he was the weakest senior student she'd ever seen. Her words stung, and Siai decided to leave her alone to avoid further interaction. But Yuer quickly asked him to wait and approached him, staring intently. Siai asked what she was doing. Yuer seemed shy, her cheeks turning pink as she struggled to find the right words. Siai thought she might want the same thing those 2 girls wanted, dual cultivation with him. But Yuer surprised him by saying he smelled really good. Siai was confused and didn't know how to respond. He wasn't sure what she meant by smelled good and wondered if she wanted something from him. As he looked around, he noticed something else very strange. 3 muscular men were approaching, watching the girl sniff him. The men reminded Siai to maintain his distance. He thought to himself that this girl was causing him nothing but trouble, and the situation was growing more chaotic. Then, an older man approached Siai, coughing to get his attention. Realizing it was the elder, Siai quickly pushed Yuer away and greeted the elder, expressing his desire to join their school. The elder remarked that while youth was full of enthusiasm, one should pay attention to time and place. Siai quickly clarified that it wasn't what the elder thought. The elder then turned to Yuer and gently scolded her, telling her not to be conceited or hasty. Yuer explained that she was just commenting on how delicious Siai smelled. The elder thought to himself that, due to ancient ruins, it was becoming increasingly difficult to attract new students to the school. As he examined Siai, the elder rubbed his mustache thoughtfully. Although this boy lacked natural talent, his potential and ambition were promising. The elder then informed Siai that he had been accepted as a disciple of the outer circle of the School of Pure Morals. He instructed Siai to wait while someone escorted him to his quarters, advising the young disciple that to perfect himself, one must learn to endure hardships and overcome difficulties. Siai was overjoyed to be accepted into the school and thanked the elder sincerely. When he arrived at his quarters, he was ready to improve himself and become a better person. This place was perfect for learning basic techniques and starting his cultivation journey. However, he felt that the techniques seemed too low level. He hadn't understood the principles of cultivation before, but now he thought about the forbidden area of the Great Void, which surely held a lot of useful knowledge. In any case, joining this school was the right decision. Siai was certain of it. His top priority now was developing his cultivation base. Siai sat down to meditate, delving deep into his mind and recalling some memories from past lives, many of which were unpleasant. He paused for a moment, wondering why he felt like he'd known Yuer for a long time, but he decided it didn't matter. She was too popular and only caused trouble, so it was best to stay away from her. Suddenly, a knock on the door interrupted Siai's meditation. He asked who it was and opened the door, saying he was busy practicing and expecting nothing important. To his surprise, it was Yuer. She had come to the guy with her belongings, asking if she could stay with him. He looked at her for a few seconds, and she looked back at him with shining eyes. Then, he slammed the door in her face and told her she couldn't come in. The girl knocked on the door, pleading with the older student to let her in, but Siai replied that it wouldn't work and told her to go back where she came from. However, she was persistent, banging on the door with her hands and calling for her brother, Shai. She yelled that she needed to tell him something important. Xiaoyu wondered what he should do, and then he opened the door, giving her 5 seconds to explain. The girl blurted out that she wanted to come live with him. Xiaoyu replied that she wouldn't be able to do that, but she looked at him with her big, beautiful eyes filled with sadness. Xiaoyu smiled and called her a silly girl, wondering aloud what she was even saying. He stroked her head and told her that things would naturally be as they should be, meaning that nothing would work out for her. He immediately slammed the door in her face and told her to leave. But the girl didn't stop. She kept banging on the door and yelling that she meant it, insisting that she really liked Xiaoyi's brother. Could it be that the older apprentice had decided to have fun with her and then dump her? Xiaoyi was already fed up and decided he should properly close the door and find some earplugs. Suddenly, a sharp blade appeared near his head. A sword had been thrust right next to him. Then, other swords and spears began to strike the door, and even a huge mace on a chain was used against it. Behind the door, where Xiaoyi stood, unbelievable things were happening. It was being pounded on as if there was an earthquake. It turned out that the girl had called in some muscular men, and they started beating on the door with their fists, shouting that Xiaoyi had taken their sister away, so now he should have the courage to open the door. Xiaoyi yelled for the brothers to calm down and not to listen to the nonsense she was telling them. He had only met her today. Honestly, he fell to his knees and started praying to the gods. This was only the first day after he joined the school, and yet he had already managed to get himself into such a mess. After a while, he found himself sitting in the company of the same girl. She was humming some annoying tune, playing with a stuffed rabbit, and singing that her name was Dalo Banab Bandab Banan, an incredibly long word she repeated many times. Xiaoyi was getting very annoyed and took the stuffed rabbit away from her. He asked the girl to finally tell him what she wanted from him. Eventually, she asked why he didn't believe that she had fallen in love with him at first sight. Xiaoyi wondered if she thought her acting talents, which had fooled the fools outside, would work on him. But then she grabbed Xiaoyi by the neck and hugged him tightly. Then she told him that there was always a very pleasant aroma around him. She didn't know why she felt that way, but his presence was incredibly conducive to her cultivation. When she came to this monastery, she immediately discovered that just by being close to him, her spiritual power began to increase at an unprecedented rate, and the closer she got to him, the stronger the effect. Afterwards, she asked him if he possessed a special spiritual root. She thought for a few seconds about what he might tell her. Could she really sense his power? Then he said that he was willing to reveal all his cards to her. He actually possessed the essence of a great Jasper immortal. She was very surprised and asked if he was really one of the 36 great celestial Jasper immortals. The girl then revealed that she possessed the star essence of the 72 earth demons. No wonder his presence was so conducive to the growth of her cultivation. Now it all made sense. Xiaoyi laughed and realized what was going on. It was good that he had already familiarized himself with some writings about essences. This knowledge was very useful. However, he told her that it didn't mean he agreed to help her. He insisted that she quickly go outside and settle the misunderstanding, explaining to those people at the door that they were not in a relationship. The girl took out a ring and asked Xiaoyi what he thought it was. She said that the ring contained spiritual stones, scrolls of martial arts and techniques, elixirs, and weapons. He could take whatever he wanted. She poured out all the items that were in her ring and apologized, saying that it was all she had with her at the moment, but she could bring more next time. Xiaoyi hovered over the girl and asked if she really intended to buy him with these trinkets. Who did she even think he was? The cute girl smiled very sweetly and asked if it really wasn't going to work out. At first, he wanted to yell at her, but her bribe was too big. Xiaoyi made a respectful bow before the young mistress and said that naturally everything would work out. The girl was very happy and said that it was wonderful. She was counting on his continued support. The next events unfolded in a slightly different place. Two men were playing a board game. One of the men had lost, and the white-haired man asked his defeated companion why he was so nervous today. Was it because of those rumors that Yua had entered the room of some new student? His interlocutor replied that naturally he could track him down, but there was no need for the white-haired man to pretend. Doing other people's dirty work was low. The white-haired man was silent and thought for a few seconds, then turned to his interlocutor, named Lua, and said that he was just a turtle who hid his head in his shell. Others might be afraid of him, but not he. Meanwhile, Yura said that in that case, they would end it there. However, there were 3 things they needed to agree on first. Firstly, the relationship between them was strictly business, so he couldn't fall in love with her. Secondly, only she could touch him, and he couldn't make any moves on her. Thirdly, he wasn't allowed to approach other girls for any reason. She then asked him if he understood. The guy who had been collecting the crystals replied that he understood everything. Yua then said that since they had agreed, she would give him some techniques because, at the moment, he was quite weak. She had 3 techniques with her that deserved his attention, but he could only choose one of them. All martial techniques were divided into 4 stages in terms of their strength: heavenly, earthly, dark, and yellow. The first cultivation technique was a fire-type dark stage technique. She explained that even the best techniques from the pure school were at the dark stage, and even if he worked there for 3 to 5 years, it wasn't guaranteed that he could obtain them. The second technique was a low-level thunder-type earth stage technique. Xia thought that an earth stage technique must be very powerful and shine brightly. Yue, noticing his excitement, told him to calm down and listen to the end. She explained that this technique was given to her by her oldest sister to be spread. The technique allowed one to summon lightning, amplify it, and throw it at the enemy. While it could be used to cultivate quickly, it usually led to the death of practitioners. Even Xiao's school possessed this technique, but she had never heard of anyone successfully mastering it. Simply put, it was a scam. So, she recommended that he choose the earth stage technique. As for the third technique, it was an attribute-less technique meant to cultivate and strengthen energy. After explaining, Yue asked Xia if he had thought about the techniques carefully. Xia replied that he naturally wanted all of them, remarking that offering multiple choices was childish. Yue called him a greedy senior student and warned him that he couldn't chase 2 birds with 1 stone. Xia reassured her not to worry. He was only curious about what techniques she had obtained from the Zishan school. Yue replied that there was nothing more to say about the techniques, as they had been given to her by her elder sister. Xia asked if the Zishan school was the strongest sect in the area since her sister was a member. Yue responded by asking if Xia really didn't understand what she was talking about. The ancient ruins that had recently been discovered by the Pure Moral School. Xia admitted he didn't know what these ancient ruins were. Yue jokingly said that she thought he was a spy sent by a great school, to which Xia replied that he was just a free wanderer. Yue explained that the purest school was one of the weakest, but despite this, too many new students had enrolled recently. Xia realized that was true but questioned why Yue had enrolled as well. Yue explained that it was because the Pure Moral School had recently discovered the ruins. These hidden places were often filled with treasures that any cultivator would dream of obtaining. To divide this finding, all the schools and sects in the area were trying to undermine the Pure Moral School, including the Zishan School. She noted that there were probably spies from all the schools in the area infiltrating the Pure Moral School right now, all pursuing the same goal, the ancient ruins. Alas, the Pure Moral School was in decline, so they could only watch helplessly as events unfolded. Xia pondered the significance of the ancient ruins of the Pure Moral School. If so many people were interested, there was a good chance someone could discover his primal essence. He thought about how to avoid that. Yue then said they had talked enough and it was time to start training. She mentioned that she had already reached the 49th stage of cultivation and suggested that they overcome the next stage together. Xia asked if, after the 9th stage, she would break through the limits of her internal energy source. Yue looked at him in surprise and said he didn't even know such obvious things. She promised to explain everything later, noting that he could find all the details in the Pure Moral School's records. The pretty girl then assumed the lotus posture and began to cultivate, saying that it was best to understand specific aspects through practice. Xia watched her for a few seconds, intrigued. He then raised the 3 techniques he had obtained and began practicing. He sat down right in front of Yue, and they began to work together with a common goal. Xia thought to himself that the 9th stage of qi absorption was just the foundation. To expand the boundaries of his inner source, he needed to concentrate more qi. Fortunately, he had already reached the 4th stage of qi absorption, so he needed to expand his limits as much as possible. It seemed that the 50th stage was Yure's limit, which explained why she was so eager to begin. Xia realized that she only needed his presence to overcome the boundaries she had previously struggled with. As the training progressed, Yue could feel herself approaching a new stage of cultivation. After a while, she finally succeeded in breaking through to the next stage. She opened her eyes and returned to the present moment, seeing Xia sitting motionless, fully concentrated. Yue couldn't just stay near him. She got very close and looked at him with her big, beautiful eyes. Yue came very close to him, wanting to kiss him. She felt an incredible feeling inside for this guy, but suddenly she blushed and quickly left his room. Xia still sat still, only hearing the door open and close. He remained silent. One of the muscular guys remarked that there was no need to worry too much. After all, Yue only went into that guy's room, so perhaps it was nothing. But someone should definitely clear up the situation first. These guys had already formed the Yue Support Union, vowing to stand by Yue's little sister until the very end. They finally saw saw the younger student come outside and called out her name. The girl looked around and asked what was the matter. The guys noticed her face was red and she looked like she had just gotten out of bed. They asked her what she and that guy had been doing together. Yura started acting really weird, tears welling up in her eyes as if she was about to cry. She said that nothing happened and, if that was all, she had to run away. The girl quickly fled, leaving the muscular guys to think they had been up to something inappropriate. They decided they had to kill the guy and began guarding his door, determined not to let him slip away. One of them even mentioned that he felt a little sorry for the guy because he had a pretty good physique. Meanwhile, they were knocking on Xia's door, unaware of the commotion outside. Xia had been studying some scriptures and was almost able to master elemental knowledge. If he could absorb enough qi, he could start breaking through the limits of his inner source. He realized that he needed to start cultivating and should try to reach the 30th step first. However, the effect of his primal essence on the girls might bring some difficulties. It was a good thing that Yura had managed to restrain herself, or the situation would have been difficult. All Xia needed to do was become stronger as quickly as possible to protect his chastity. By the way, Yura had provided him with so many things, including an unstoppable path to inner freedom. The name of this stepless technique was Inspiring Hope, a truly worthwhile technique. Next, Xia began reciting some words. Free from doubt, follow the dictates of your heart. Your mind creates a picture of the world. If your heart is free from doubt, all beings will submit to you. Having gained freedom and equanimity, your soul will be able to break through the heavens. After 2 hours, Xia felt that he had reached the 6th step. He was a genius. After 4 hours, he reached the 9th step, marveling at how quickly he was progressing. His cultivation speed was lightning fast. After 8 hours, he reached the 20th step. Xia thought to himself that they truly had a reborn celestial. By the end of 3 days, he had managed to reach the 50th step. He reflected on his level of strength, realizing he still had a long way to go. He also noticed that the walls in the room were cracking at the seams, probably due to the release of spiritualized qi. After 7 days, Xia was still in his dwelling, while the guys who had been guarding him were still waiting outside. Finally, after 7 days, Xia emerged from his dwelling. The muscular guys noticed and immediately shouted at him, saying that because he had offended Yura's sister, they were going to destroy him. One of the guys rushed at Xia, trying to hit him with his fist, but Xia simply slapped the big guy in the face, telling him to wait and take his time. The blow was so powerful that the guy flew back a few meters and crashed into a block of stone. The other guys couldn't believe it. They hadn't realized that Xia had already reached the 25th stage of qi absorption. Could Xia have sent him flying with a single blow? Xia replied that he had asked them to wait, so there was no need to complain. He also told them to listen up because he didn't care about them and would just leave. Another guy, offended by Xia's nerve, asked if he knew what was in store for him for such deeds. Xia turned to him and said, "Maybe you'll punish me yourself?" The guys started to get nervous as Xia looked at them with a cold stare for a few seconds before smiling and saying he was joking. He told them not to be nervous. Everyone saw that Brother Mu started it. If he hadn't reacted to the punch, he would be in Mu's place right now. Then the man in the swim cap said he was done talking trash. He reminded them that Xia hit Brother Mu, and that was a fact. At the same time, he wondered how such a thing was possible. As far as he could remember, Xia was no more than a freshman who had recently joined their school, so why was he feeling so much pressure from him? Or was he just imagining it? Suddenly, an elder appeared among them and asked why they were all gathered there. Xia recognized him as the same master he had met before. The muscular guys quickly turned to the elder, eager to explain what had happened. The elder looked at Xia and thought to himself that this was the young man who had come to them a few days ago and only possessed the 4th degree of qi absorption. Now, the elder didn't understand when Xia's strength had grown so much. Before anything else, all the disciples greeted the elder and bowed their heads in respect. After that, the muscular boys informed the elder that Xia had deliberately injured one of their comrades, and the two of them could confirm it. According to the laws of their school, he should be banished and his spirit channels cancelled. The elder looked at Xia with a disapproving expression and asked him if he was really the one who traumatized the guy. Xia thought for a few seconds, scratched the back of his head, and pondered how best to respond. Finally, he said that it was probably him. 50/50ths. The old man shouted that this was outrageous. Either he did it, or he didn't. What did he mean by 50/50ths? Xia replied that there was nothing he could do. The guy suddenly ran at him with the intention of hitting him, and Xia couldn't just stand there and do nothing. So, he only slapped him lightly on the face to calm him down a bit. Who knew it would end so badly for him? The elder then turned to the man in the swim cap and asked if this was really how it happened. The muscular guy apologized to the elder and told him not to believe Xia. The elder retorted that these boys were all sneaking into the school because of the glory they hoped to gain from the ancient ruins, lazing around all day, and only knowing how to plot against each other, especially this mysterious boy. The elder noted that even he couldn't see Xia's true cultivation level at first. No doubt Xia was using some technique to hide his true strength. The elder then said that the situation was clear to him. The one who had just complained should now come over to be punished. The guy in the cap tried to justify himself, but the elder told him to shut up. Did they really think he was a fool? According to the school's law, the person who defended himself would not be punished. On the other hand, the guy had almost sworn that it happened differently, hadn't he? The elder then turned to Xia and asked if he had just recently joined them. Xia replied that he had, and the elder said that meant he hadn't received any funds from their school yet. That was fine. As compensation, these two would give him 3 months' worth of funds. Xia was very surprised and asked the elder if this was too strict. Xia realized that if he accepted this compensation, he would finally ruin his relationship with all the disciples. After thinking about it, Xia told the elder that Yu had helped him a lot, and he didn't want to lose that, so the elder shouldn't punish them so harshly. The old man said that it was very noble of Xia, but since they were already giving him the compensation, he should take it. Suddenly, Xia felt that he couldn't speak at all. The old fox had decided to seal his voice to force him to accept the compensation. The muscular man wearing the cap turned to the elder and wanted to say something, but the elder shouted at him, asking how he dared to interfere at all, causing him to lose his funds for 1 year. Scum who are unable to even make an unexpected attack are of no use at all. The muscular guy fell to the floor and said his disciple dared not say anything else. Xia thought this was all an unnecessary hassle. After that, he decided to get out of there quickly, but one of the guys shouted after him, angrily challenging Xia and asking if he would accept the challenge. Xia replied, "Are they really not going to help their brother? Are they going to leave that disciple behind?" Xia started to walk away, but those guys were yelling at him to wait. They weren't done with him yet. Xia thought he had just gotten himself into more trouble, and decided it was better to find some place to hide now. The old man watched all this and thought to himself that Xia was good. He knew when to advance and when to retreat. The elder pondered what a promising talent this guy had. How great it would be if Xia really turned out to be a student of his school. The elder also considered the appearance of these ancient ruins, wondering if it was a curse or a blessing. After spending some time in the windy city to observe the unfolding events, Xia noticed a man on the street outside a certain establishment, calling people to come inside. The man was advertising that within, they could enjoy a delicious meal and have a good rest. Xia sat and listened to all of this, but he was also busy with his own business. He concentrated, then clenched the purple crystals in his fist. This was the 72nd step in his formation to advance to the next level. After he unclenched his palm, he saw that the crystals had shattered into shards. His cultivation speed had slowed down considerably. Did this mean he had encountered an obstacle? Xia had been avoiding a certain group of people for quite a few days. It was probably time to return. The girl likely thought he had left her behind and run away. The senior disciple had disappeared for so long that he was probably being seen as a scoundrel. The man who owned the establishment asked Xia if he was really planning to leave already. Xia replied that he had to go and said goodbye. The man wished him well and suggested that he come again. At that moment, Xia was being watched by someone as he went about his business, reading a note and contemplating his next move. Suddenly, someone bumped into him, hitting him with their shoulder. Xia apologized and continued on his way, but the person stopped him, turning back to Xia and asking if he thought he could just leave after the collision. Xia looked around and saw that more people were approaching. He thought to himself, this could be good for me, but didn't realize who these people in purple outfits were. He remained silent, but one of the men spoke, saying that Xia must be brave. It was then that Xia realized they must be from the Zishan school. Xia said that he had already apologized and asked what they wanted from him. He remembered that Zishan was the largest Buddhist monastery in the vicinity. Should he provoke them? But these men were behaving in a very impertinent manner. They told him to stop talking and follow orders without further questions. Xia brushed the arm of the insolent man off his shoulder and suggested that in public they should be a bit more reasonable. He then turned around and said that he had said everything he needed to say. If they wanted to make a ruckus, they could do so without him. As expected, they didn't let up. Xia felt a threat from behind as one of the insolent men in purple clothes attacked him, but Xia quickly repelled the attack. He looked at the man nonchalantly. While the insolent man was very surprised by this turn of events, he realized that Xia was quite strong. Who would have thought that this kid, who was half a step away from the village of the Bubbling Spring, could withstand a full-force attack from a powerhouse of the Immortal Grotto boundary? It wouldn't be strange if an ordinary person died from such a blow. At the same time, Xia thought they had deliberately decided to cause him trouble. One of the men asked if Xia's body was protected by something, and then a white-haired man grabbed grabbed Xiaoyi's clothes. Xiaoyi asked what they were doing, and the disrespectful men replied that they were doing whatever they wanted. Nothing wrong with that. They demanded that he give up whatever protection he was wearing, and maybe they would spare him. Xiaoyi calmly replied that he wasn't wearing any armor. Naturally, the men didn't believe him. Xiaoyi, undeterred, told them they shouldn't harm people so recklessly. Xiaoyi continued, saying that he actually had serious connections. At first, those guys looked at each other in confusion, and then they burst into loud laughter. They asked Xiao what those connections were and encouraged him to tell them, as if daring him to scare them. Xiao didn't want to fight them, especially in public. He realized they weren't confused at all. Had they made inquiries about him, he knew bluffing wouldn't work and he couldn't lie carelessly. Xiao decided to tell them almost the truth. He said he came from the Dark Sky Heavenly Thirst School. This revelation seemed to genuinely frighten the men. They were well aware of the reputation of that place. People usually didn't return alive from there. The white-haired men didn't believe him at first. They accused him of bluffing and demanded proof. In response, Xiao took out the aphrodisiac he had stolen from those two girls. He said that while they might not believe him, this aphrodisiac was given to him by his mentor sister. If he were to accidentally break it and a drop of it landed on them, who knows what might happen? Hearing this, the hooligans decided to spare him for the day. Xia, with a hint of sarcasm, asked what they meant by sparing him. Hadn't he supposedly misappropriated a sister student from the Zishan school? How could they just let him go? He continued, suggesting that maybe he should find some of his mentor sisters and have a good talk with them. The men in purple clothing decided it was best to leave, not wanting to cause any more trouble for themselves or Xia. Xia watched them depart for a few seconds, but then suddenly coughed. When he looked at his hand, he saw blood on it. He thought to himself that this time, it had been really dangerous. There's no need to linger here. I should hurry back to the School of Pure Manners. After a while, Xia reached the School of Pure Manners. He was on his way to the monastery, reflecting on what had happened not too long ago. If he hadn't used the reputation of the Heavenly Thirst School in that situation, there was a good chance he wouldn't have survived the encounter. As he passed by a certain place, another man in purple clothing was already waiting for him. The man asked Xia to wait. Xia looked around and thought, what's going on again? Is this the Zishan school again? The white-haired man said it was nothing. He just wanted to warn him about something. With an ominous tone, he told Xia to stay away from your student, even if he was from the Heavenly Thirst School. Xia asked the man if that meant he was the one who had set those people on him. The man in purple clothing laughed and said Xia had no proof. Even if it were true, what could a trash fish like him do about it? Xia asked. What does that mean? I've never met you before, and yet you want me dead? Isn't this white-haired guy going overboard? The white-haired guy retorted. What do you mean by overdoing it? If you kneel down, bark, and swear to disappear from your life forever, then I'll let you go right away. Xia realized this guy was crazy and didn't want to mess with him at all. The unfriendly man scoffed, saying, You're just a toad dreaming of eating swan meat. Don't you see that you're a nobody? Xia simply turned around and started to walk away, saying that he was indeed a nobody and that the man was certainly the most honored and respected. He wanted to avoid a fight, but his calm demeanor only made the white-haired guy angrier. The man used some technique of his own and chopped down a tree next to Xia, even managing to cut Xiao's face slightly, drawing blood. Now angry, Xia thought that these guys from Zishan school seemed to enjoy ambushing people. Suddenly, an elder appeared in front of them and asked what they were doing there. The elder approached the white-haired guy and reminded him that personal disputes between disciples of different sects were forbidden. He asked how many times he needed to be told this. The arrogant guy bowed to the elder and claimed there was a misunderstanding. He said that Xiao was just beginning to grasp the basics of cultivation and was still not fully understanding the essence of it. Therefore, he had come to offer Xiao some advice, merely showing him some skills. There was no conflict here. Xiao remained silent as the elder looked on, thinking that this situation seemed familiar. The elder then said he understood, but warned that even if it was true, such actions were not allowed at the school. He would forgive them this time, but they should not expect mercy in the future. The arrogant guy thanked the elder for his greatness. As the elder was about to leave, Xia spoke up, asking the elder to wait for a moment. Xia turned to the elder and said that he had indeed asked his senior disciple for advice, but it was a pity that this senior disciple seemed only capable of attacking younger students. Therefore, Xia hoped that, under the elder's supervision, he could have a fair exchange of combat experience with the senior disciple in the school's arena on equal footing. Xia suggested that his senior disciple wouldn't be stingy in giving him some instruction. The elder was certain that this kid from Zishan's school was here to cause trouble, and though he didn't know the specifics of their dispute, he thought that if Xia confronted the senior disciple, he'd surely get hurt. What is this kid thinking? He wondered. The white-haired guy laughed and said it was rare to find such an inquisitive student. The purple-clothed guy then turned to the elder and said that real practice is the the best way to grow and realize one's true potential. The elder decided to organize the duel for them that same day. Quite a few people gathered to watch the event, discussing the fact that Z Tanning was going to fight a disciple who had just recently entered the school. They speculated that Z Tanning was already halfway to the Immortal's Grotto and wondered if this newcomer could be at the same level. The crowd dismissed Xia as just a small fry who hadn't even reached the level of the bubbling spring. But Xia stood in the arena with a completely calm demeanor. Someone in the crowd remarked that they had heard the fight was over a girl. Z Tanning turned to Xia and warned him not to expect any mercy when the time came, saying there was no need to get emotional. Xia scratched his ear and casually replied that it would be fine as long as Z Tanning didn't soil his pants in front of everyone. In the midst of the crowd, only the sound of high heels could be heard. It was Yor. The onlookers whispered that while Xia seemed arrogant, Yor had liked him from the first day he arrived. They also mentioned that a group of senior students had spontaneously formed an alliance to support her. Yor finally made her way through the crowd and asked Xia what he was doing there. Xia replied that what he was doing had nothing to do with her. Yor wanted to say something else, but she suddenly stopped and tears welled up in her eyes. The white-haired guy turned to her and asked if she knew Xia, reassuring her that they were just exchanging experiences and that he would try not to hurt him. Yor responded that it had nothing to do with that, and the Zishan disciple had misunderstood. Xia was not important to her at all. Then she called the white-haired guy closer, as if she wanted to tell him something in confidence. He leaned in, and she whispered in his ear that she found him disgusting. She then told him not to be afraid to teach Xia a lesson for her. The arrogant guy thought that if his sister disciple said so, he wouldn't hold back. But then she turned to him again and reminded him that his cultivation level was very high, and if he didn't suppress it and used his full strength, there might be gossip among the people. Z Tanning agreed that his sister disciple was right and mentioned that she had a limit suppression elixir just for him. If he drank it and fought with it, no matter how badly Xia was hurt, no one could say the strong were bullying the weak. Yor then smiled sweetly and said that she wanted to see his brave and attractive side. The elder once again reminded both sides of the rules. They should fight within the boundaries of the chief selection, and they must not forget that it is forbidden to use deadly skills. Everyone had already prepared to watch something interesting. The elder carefully looked at both participants and then announced that the competition would begin right away. The white-haired guy turned to Xia and said, "Are you wondering if I have a problem with my eyes or if I'm just an arrogant person? Let me tell you, I'm an honorable member of my sect, halfway to the Immortal Grotto boundary. Even if I were to use strength at the C selection boundary, at this level, I'm at the 40th step. You're just a lowly nobody compared to me." Xia smiled and said, "The 40th step is very impressive." The arrogant guy also smiled and asked, "What kind of frog are you, at the bottom of the well? Brother disciple, why don't you start first so that when the time comes, I won't accidentally kill you?" Xia responded, "If you're so insistent, then you'd better get ready." He had already started to use his strength, confident that he could win. The arrogant guy thought to himself that Xia was still underestimating him. But as soon as he had that thought, he immediately saw a fist flying right at his face. The arrogant guy had been so smug that he didn't even notice when Xia started his attack. Xia punched him in the face, not even using his full strength. The white-haired guy's fan flew out of his hands. The impact was so strong that the white-haired guy landed near the edge of the ring. This moment was incredibly surprising to everyone, even the elder, who was completely shocked. The elder announced that the competition was over and was about to declare the winner, but suddenly the white-haired guy shouted for everyone to wait. He claimed it wasn't fair. Xia had made an unexpected attack, and he didn't have time to dodge. Xia turned to him and said, "We were just exchanging experiences. It might be traumatic to continue, but if brother disciple wants to fight, then we will continue." Xia asked him if he was aware of a phase that was perfect for him. The guy in purple clothing warned our hero to be careful, but then he got really angry and lunged at Xia to knock him down. However, the nonchalant Xia easily dodged the attack. Xia asked, "Was that not a surprise attack just now?" The white-haired guy watched his opponent with anger, unable to understand how this trash fish could hurt him, or why Xia's speed was so much faster than his. The purple-clothed cultivator fell to the floor, and our hero kicked him lightly in the ribs to get him up. The crowd of onlookers was shocked. Who would have thought that Z Tanning would fall on his back so easily? People started to say that it was obvious Z Tanning's reputation was inflated if he could be knocked down like this on equal footing. Xia turned to his opponent and asked if he needed to stop now. His opponent was at the 40th step, but Xia confidently revealed that he was actually at the 72nd step. Upon hearing this, Z Tanning reconsidered fighting him and just lay on the floor, not even getting up. Everyone was watching him, and he felt his insignificance, looking around in panic. His reputation was ruined, and what's worse, he was being watched by the very very girl who had wanted to help him. He couldn't give up so easily and thought about pushing his limits just a little further. The arrogant guy watched our hero, thinking that even if Xiao was at the 72nd step, he was still a nobody. He convinced himself that Xiao was no match for him and suddenly launched another surprise attack. Xiao continued to repel his attacks, even feeling as though his strength had increased. Then he realized that this guy was using the power of transforming boundary vibrations. The arrogant guy grew more cocky and attacked Xiao with blow after blow. Xiao wondered if anyone noticed what was happening. For a moment, Xiao hesitated, and that was when the arrogant guy saw an opportunity to strike. He punched Xiao in the chest, causing him to step back a few meters. Xiao was thinking about what to do next as Yu watched the scene along with the rest of the crowd. She thought that the elixir she had given to the white-haired guy seemed to be taking effect. That elixir, given to him earlier, should have suppressed his limits, but now something very strange was happening. It seemed that the elixir had started to act completely differently from what it was supposed to. Zitanning's eyes were very intense as he looked at Xia. Xia sensed that something was wrong. This wasn't just an enraged opponent. Zitanning had somehow changed a lot. He turned to our hero and wanted to say something. His eyes sparkled, and he said that he had just noticed that Xia seemed very cute. It turns out that if you push your limits to the highest level, retract your chi, and use that elixir, it would create an indescribable effect. Z began to approach our hero with clearly non-combative intentions, saying that retracting the disciple's attack wasn't a bad move. It actually made him feel very good. Naturally, Xia tensed up, thinking that his opponent had lost his mind. Z now saw things differently, just like in this moment. Z turned to Xia and asked, "Why are you talking like that? Why are you suddenly saying such obscene things? Do you want to hurt me? It's better for us to just enjoy life." Xia tried to run away, shouting at Z not to touch him, but in the white-haired guy's eyes, it looked very different. Despite still having some remnants of his sanity, Z thought to himself, "It's obvious that I'm already using power at the edge of the bubbling source boundary. Then why is he still able to dodge like that? And why does my chest feel this pinching sensation? What could this really mean?" Xia, thinking that since Z had chosen such a twisted path, he shouldn't be surprised if Xia returned the favor, quickly pulled out his secret weapon, one he had used before to crush a big opponent. The guys watching shouted loudly when they saw the weapon. The elder slapped his forehead, thinking to himself, "Is this guy really trying to look cool with a weapon like that? I didn't expect him to have such a thing. The elder disciple really is an amazing student." Xia shouted for Z to lie still or he would kill him, then hit him on the head with the pink weapon a few times. Naturally, in Z's eyes, it all looked very different. He even seemed to enjoy being hit. An awkward pause followed, and the elder didn't know what to say in such a situation, but he still decided to determine the winner, announcing, "The winner is Xia!" All the spectators began to cheer for the victor. Yu also cheered for him, shouting that it was great and that the senior student was very cool. Then she noticed some strange looks from the crowd as Xia approached her. He looked at her with an attentive and intense gaze, and she, embarrassed, thought about what would happen next. She said, "Senior student, you're getting too close. Everyone is looking at us." Xia told her to stop pretending and come with him, grabbing her by the hair and pulling her along. The following events unfolded in our protagonist's dwelling. Xia asked the girl if what happened to Z was her doing. She replied that it was, and that he should be grateful to her. Otherwise, he wouldn't have managed to win, right? Xia asked her if she realized how much trouble she had caused him. The girl responded by asking if perhaps the senior disciple wanted Yu to always be by his side, protecting him. Xia replied that he didn't want that, which made the girl cry because he had rejected her so harshly. She thought that he didn't quite understand her feelings after all, and then said that if he decided to go to the ancient ruin of the school, he should be careful. Xia asked her if she was saying that this was why Z had decided to manipulate him, and she confirmed it. She explained that the people of the Zenin school did not shy away from such methods. She also said that if the senior student got hurt because of his relationship with her, she would be very worried. Xia asked her what she had just said, but the girl denied saying anything. Then she ran up to him, urging him to practice together, adding that she still hadn't given him her gift. Xia refused, saying, "You can't get a reward without work, and this ingratiation won't help you." She ran up to him, whining for him to agree, saying she had specifically prepared for him. Xia replied that after her trickery and the problems she had caused him recently, he didn't trust her. The girl took offense and said that the senior student was such a rascal, not realizing how lucky he was at all. Xia then mentioned the ruin she had referred to, saying he would like to talk about it. But as soon as he tried to say more, a red thread was thrown over his head so quickly that he didn't even realize how he ended up completely entangled in it. The girl tied him up and tightened the knot. Xia shouted, asking if she was really crazy, and demanded to know what she was doing. Yu said that she hadn't noticed before, but his view from behind was quite good. Xia yelled at her to watch her behavior, saying that even if he showed his power today and she suddenly fell in love with him, you can't rush into such things, you have to nurture your feelings first. The girl shouted back, asking what he was even talking about. She claimed he was only able to win because of her ingenuity. Xia asked why she tied him up, insisting that he had no such hobbies. Yu replied that, at that time, in the middle of their training, her body had started to feel very strange. For some reason, she felt that if they continued, things could take a bad turn. So this time, the senior disciple would be tied up, and there would be no problem, right? Xia shouted that there would definitely be a problem, and suggested that if she wanted to bind someone, she should bind herself. Finally, she was able to do what she wanted. There were still 2 more steps left. At this moment, Xia was thinking about the possibility of being defiled. Yu thought that this guy was stupid for not noticing such a beautiful girl, but for some reason, she felt very strange. She wanted to do more things to him. Then she thought, could it be possible that she, too, accidentally inhaled the elixir she had given to Z earlier? Leaving Xia lying on the floor, tied up, Yu decided to go outside to recover. Xia thought that if something like this happened a few more times, it would definitely cause problems. After moving around a bit, Xia noticed that the rope was very slippery for some reason. After a while, he managed to free himself. He looked at his back and noticed that it was wet. It seemed he had sweated a lot during cultivation. At least because of this, he was able to free himself. Although he managed to defeat Z this time, it was by luck. Not counting Z, even Yu managed to tie him up without any problems. He knew the strength of his opponents, but who knew how their next encounter would end? Reflecting on this, Xia sighed heavily, realizing that there was no use in worrying about it. His first priority was to raise his cultivation level as soon as possible. He had almost completely mastered the basic techniques of the Pure Moor school. Surely, a school as influential as Zishan had many high-level techniques. The dark stage techniques were clearly no match for the techniques he had mastered. If anything, the only option left was to choose the earth stage technique, a thunder-type cultivation technique. If it was really as dangerous as Yu said, then it was worth a try. At the same time that he decided to use this technique, it was a bright sunny day outside, but suddenly, in the middle of a clear sky, a bolt of lightning struck. The guard who was guarding the gate jumped, quickly running to the senior apprentice's room to check if everything was all right. When she arrived, she saw something that made her laugh. Xia, noticing her reaction, asked why she was smiling. The girl laughed loudly and asked if he had decided to cultivate a Buddhist technique. Confused, Xia asked what she was talking about. The girl said she would give him a mirror, and when he looked into it, he saw that he was bald. Xia was distraught, realizing he wanted to become stronger, not bald. Yu reassured him, saying not to worry. She had a special elixir for hair growth and guaranteed that his hair would grow back in one night. She even added that his head felt good to the touch. Relieved, Xia thanked his sister disciple, now understanding that she wanted the best for him. The girl then turned around, ready to leave, and told him they would continue in a few days. But as she was about to leave, Xia stopped her and asked if there were any places nearby that were not too dangerous for martial practice. Yu replied that if he wanted to raise his combat level, a good choice would be to take on an assignment from the school. All the school's assignments were divided by danger level, and he could choose one that matched his strength, making it relatively safe. She also mentioned that the place where the assignments were published wasn't far from the school. However, she cautioned him not to take an assignment far from the school, as they needed to continue training together again in a few days. The next day, Xia used the elixir Yu had given him, and as it turned out, his hair had grown quite long. He was on his way to get the assignment, but even though she said the place wasn't far, he still couldn't find where the assignments were posted. Suddenly, he saw a familiar guard and called out to him. However, the guard clearly didn't like being touched, and when he turned around, he saw our hero with long hair, looking quite cute. Embarrassed, the guard's face turned red, and he approached Xia, saying that of course, he could ask him anything. Xia began to ask something, but before he could, another guy nearby interrupted. The enlisted man said Xia shouldn't be in such a hurry. It was too early. As it turned out, this guy thought Xia was some kind of sister disciple. Xia already had a bad feeling and didn't like being mistaken for a sister disciple. He realized that Yu had done this on purpose. Now, he thought to himself that he would surely be able to strengthen his cultivation level. 2 days later, Xia was in the southern mountains, reading the assignment to destroy the bandits. He thought to himself, couldn't they write the location more clearly? While lying under a tree to rest a little from his journey, in the same place, a random girl came running. Xia kept thinking that without an exact location, confusion. He didn't know where to go. Meanwhile, a pretty girl with a beautiful figure was running away from someone very quickly. Xia decided to take it easy and just rest. Finally, the girl saw Xia, who didn't expect anything bad. He was just thinking that the weather today was good. As it turned out, this girl was being chased by men with swords. She begged the guy sitting under the tree to save her. Xia heard his name being called. He didn't realize who could be calling him in such a place. He was just sitting quietly under a tree when suddenly a girl with pink hair jumped on him. He didn't even know if she was addressing him at all. The girl sought refuge with him, saying it was good that he was there. She needed help dealing with those guys. Xia looked up and saw that they were surrounded by a whole crowd of ninjas, all of them armed. He didn't want to deal with them at all. He turned to the group and said that it was all a misunderstanding. He was just a passerby. He could tell from their breathing that they were much stronger than him, and that mean woman clearly intended to drag him into her troubles. The leader of the masked men approached Xia. His specialty was that he was left-handed. The man remarked that since the girl had been calling him disciple all along, did he really think they would believe his story? Xia replied that they didn't know each other at all. The girl interjected, saying that even though her brother claimed otherwise, there was a pond beneath the ancient abode of the Celestials, 30 li to the southeast. If they worked together to force the enemy to retreat, they could share whatever they found there. Xia didn't understand what the ancient abode of the Celestials was all about. She told him to stop talking nonsense, but the masked men weren't going to hesitate for long. They immediately attacked. The leader of the gang ordered his men to kill both of them and not let either escape. Xia realized that things were as bad as possible, and there was nothing he could do. He quickly raised his head and shouted that he was Elder Wang's personal disciple from the Zishan school. If they dared to attack him, the astral origin that Master Wang had planted in him would activate, and no matter where they went, they'd never have a place to hide. The armed men paused, wondering what he was talking about. It seemed to work. When they found out he was from the Zishan school, they stopped attacking. The leader said it was very fortunate since they were also from the same school and showed Xia a plaque with the school's name. Xia realized that he had screwed up and could be exposed very easily now. The leader of the ninjas pointed out that most of the elders of Zishan have the surname Z, and among the 5 with other surnames, there isn't a single one named Long. Where did he come from? Xia tried to justify himself, saying that the Zishan school had a hidden master who lived near Elder Z. Of course, small pawns like them wouldn't know anything about it. Suddenly, one of the masked men told his leader that things were bad. The woman was using a communication talisman, and the kid had been distracting their attention. The chief ninja got angry, realizing that Xia had been playing them. The leader then ordered an attack on Xia, aiming to kill him first. Xia managed to dodge the initial attack, but another ninja quickly attacked from behind. The masked men continued their assault, but none of them could land a hit on Xia. They looked at each other, puzzled by his speed, and then decided to change tactics. One attacked from above, and the other from below. But even that didn't help. Xia was as slippery as a creeper. Frustrated, they decided to attack together. Xia thought it was fortunate that he had learned the technique of the Pure Moor school. Though it had no combat potential, its life-saving abilities were truly first class. The masked men were growing angrier. They realized that while the woman might escape, the guy had to be killed before it was too late. The ninjas then used their special technique, the sword formation. They surrounded Xia, thinking that this time, he definitely wouldn't be able to dodge. One of them sarcastically said that maybe Xia could fly, but to their surprise, he somehow flew into the air, leaving the enemies below. Such a turn of events left the ninjas stunned. Even the girl with pink hair was surprised. Xia had used the 4-step pure mantra technique, but it consumed an incredible amount of spiritual energy. Luckily, it had 74 steps of chi selection, so he couldn't get out for long. Sooner or later, he would have to come down. The ninjas stood there, staring in disbelief, unsure whether to believe he could actually fly. Xia, realizing he had no other choice, began pulling some items from his pockets. The masked men braced themselves, thinking he had some secret weapon. As it turned out, it was a secret technique called Heavenly Maiden Sprinkling Flowers. Xia threw several small bombs at his opponents, which immediately shattered. The bombs contained a mixture of aphrodisiacs, heavenly hops and peach mist. The ninjas held their breath, trying to figure out how to attack him, while the girl thought to herself that this guy really at chi-absorbing level? The gang leader coughed, finally unable to hold his breath, and inhaled the aphrodisiac. He called our hero a filthy lowlife and declared that he had long since reached the immortal grotto level, so Xia's tricks were nothing to him. Xia looked at him and said, "That's very cool if it's true, but are you sure your men are as strong as you?" The chief ninja turned around to check on his men, only to find that they were affected by the aphrodisiacs. One of them started confessing that he had secretly admired another guy for a while. Something rather creepy happened between them. They walked over to each other and started hugging. The ringleader realized he had lost control of his men and, shouting at Xia, called him a scoundrel for dishonoring hammering them like that. Xia tried to reason with him, saying, "Wait, why can't we just talk about this?" The masked man snapped back. "What is there to discuss?" Xia descended to the ground to speak with the black-clad man. Our hero began to explain. "As I said before, I'm just a passerby. Besides, your men aren't in any danger now, but if they get serious, who knows what could happen, right?" Xia continued. "If you leave now and take your men with you, I swear that no one will ever find out about your men's business today. What do you think?" The ninja raised his sword and asked, "Do you stand by your words?" The girl was watching all of this unfold. Xia replied, "Naturally, I'm responsible for my words. If a man says so, then so be it." But it seemed the girl had completely different plans. The gang leader agreed, saying they would just take the girl away and let Xia go. However, he made it clear that Xia shouldn't think he would get away with it. As soon as they got the antidote, they would deal with him. Suddenly, the head ninja heard a strange sound behind him. A huge needle stabbed into the neck of one of his men, followed by 2 more needles striking the heads of 2 others. The chief ninja managed to deflect the needle aimed at his head. Instead of saving each other, the men just stood there, hugging. One of the wounded ninjas told his companion that, despite spending so little time together, he was glad to spend his last moments with him. The other ninja cried, saying that if they met again in the future, he'd like to die with him. Both were under the influence of the aphrodisiac and didn't fully grasp what was happening. Then the girl threw another needle into the head of the ninja who was holding his dying friend. They died, but they died with love for each other, their souls still united. The girl thought, "What kind of situation is this?" This event made the head ninja furious, and he shouted that they were a pair of dogs. The girl looked around and saw one ninja she hadn't hit. She thought, after such a long chase, she was completely exhausted. Laughing, she said, "I didn't think things would end like this." The ninja looked at Xia and asked him if the 2 of them had really planned the whole thing from the beginning. In truth, Xia didn't understand what had happened at all. He didn't want to kill or harm anyone. Who was he, and where was he? The ninja pounced on Xia, aiming to chop off his head. Xia shouted that he really didn't know the girl. The ninja screamed that he should have killed Xia a long time ago, and then he would kill that vile woman to avenge his fallen brothers. Xia realized the ninja was serious, and the difference between their levels was too great. Yet, Xia managed to dodge his punch. He started running toward the girl, calling her sister, and wanting to ask her what she was talking about. But when he looked around, there wasn't even a trace of her, and he felt bad that she had gotten him into trouble, and then just ran away. The enemy took advantage of Xia's hesitation and stabbed him in the back with his sword. Xia felt a sharp pain in his back and began to collapse. The wound was quite serious, and as he fell to the ground, blood pooled around him. An ordinary person would have died on the spot. His last words were addressed to his sister disciple, urging her to avenge him. After that, Xia just passed out. The ninja was glad that this lowlife at the vibration level was finally dead, but there wasn't a second to lose. The girl couldn't have run far. Xia lay motionless for a few moments, but then his hand began to twitch slightly. Meanwhile, in the nearby forest, the girl with pink hair was trying to hide. Suddenly, she stopped and looked back, something nagging at her. She remembered the guy who had been sitting quietly under the tree, and how she had dragged him into this mess. The girl thought to herself that in this cultivation world, you could only trust yourself. Suddenly, the same ninja who had been hunting her appeared behind her. He sneered, asking if she really thought she could escape. The girl stood still, watching him for a moment. The ninja decided to attack so she couldn't run anymore, but she managed to dodge, though her veil was torn from her face. The ninja saw her face and realized she was quite beautiful. Immediately, dirty thoughts crossed his mind. He considered doing something unspeakable before killing her, but suddenly, the girl threw some small stones at him. These turned out to be thunderstones, and as soon as they touched his face, they exploded loudly. It wasn't deadly, but it was painful, and the ninja was enveloped in thick smoke that blinded him. Now that the ninja recognized the thunderstone technique, he realized it was from the Xian school. Holding his face in pain, he knew this was the girl's chance to escape. Yet, despite this, she had reached her limit and didn't run. The ninja, eyes red with pain, opened them and saw the girl standing still. He asked her why she hadn't run away and began to suspect that this was her last trump card. Both of them were unable to move, but since he was at the grotto immortal level, he would recover faster than her. He taunted her, saying that once he regained his strength, he would deal with her properly, making her regret ever crossing them and begging for death. At that moment, a familiar silhouette appeared in the distance. It was Xia. He asked, "Can't either of you move now?" Smiling, he added, "Looks like I came just in time." It turned out that while junior apprentice Yue was tying up our protagonist, she thought about the possibility that he might run into people from Zan's school again. She feared that next time, he might not be so lucky and could die. That's why she decided to give him a protective amulet as a gift, hoping that nothing would happen to him. As it turned out, this amulet came in handy. The ninja, still motionless, asked our hero why he was still alive. A lowly person at the level of chi vibration should have died 1,000 times already. Sure, in response, simply smiled and said that maybe he had a talent. The ninja was infuriated, but he couldn't harm Sure in his current state. Suddenly, the ninja coughed up blood. Sure was confused, as the ninja hadn't been injured, but the coughing intensified, and the ninja began choking even more. Xia looked on, not understanding what was happening, as the ninja collapsed to the ground and appeared to die. How is that possible? Did he die of rage? Sure thought to himself, not believing the ninja was truly dead. He moved closer to check. At the same time, the girl was holding a talisman behind her back. It seemed to be the cause of the man's death. She had actually been targeting our hero, but it wasn't that simple. Suddenly, the talisman flew out of her hands. She certainly didn't expect this and was very surprised. The talisman flew into the air and exploded into several pieces right before her eyes. It turned out that Xia was the one who had done it. The girl looked at him with fear, unsure of what would happen next. Xia, surrounded by a purple glow from the east, asked her if she still dared to try to send a message right in front of him. He questioned whether she realized the situation she was in. The girl, surprised, wondered where he was from. Was he from the school of pure manners or Xing'an? Xia smiled in her direction, though he was slightly annoyed. He asked her if it really mattered to her right now, reminding her that he had been saying all along that he was just an ordinary passerby who didn't want to harm anyone. The girl thought for a few seconds and then said that it seemed like this was all a big misunderstanding. She suggested that he was a noble knight and asked if he could let her go. Sure was very angry with the girl. She had caused him a lot of problems and had almost gotten him killed. He questioned her sharply, his voice filled with obvious aggression. The girl then replied that she understood, and if he wanted to kill her, then so be it. He could do whatever he wanted to her. Sure abruptly moved toward her and looked her straight in the eyes, making her a little scared. He laughed and asked, "Really, anything?" He realized that she still didn't understand anything. She sat in front of him, clearly confused and not knowing what was going to happen next. Then, she suddenly opened her eyes wide and her cheeks reddened. She was clearly tense, unsure of what she was seeing. Sure smiled maniacally as the girl screamed for him to stop, insisting that he shouldn't do whatever it was he was about to do. Sure asked what she suspected he was going to do, implying there was nothing improper underneath it. He reached his hand toward her, and the girl screamed loudly, a scream so loud that it startled the birds in the trees, causing them to take flight. The girl screamed for him to stay away, threatening that if he touched her, she would kill him. She would kill him for sure. She shouted that she would kill him first and then herself, so he had better not touch her. She yelled this with her eyes closed. When she opened them, she didn't realize what was happening. Her heart was beating very fast. Meanwhile, Xia just stood by the side, doing nothing, merely watching the girl's tantrum. Xia noticed that she had a hidden weapon in her arsenal, one capable of injuring someone at the level of a grotto immortal, so she must have some status. Moreover, she had sent a message earlier, so if he killed her, it could cause problems in the future. Xia remained standing next to the girl as she fussed and shouted that she couldn't let this happen, that she didn't want to, and that she only liked girls. Xia grew tired of her outburst and told her to stop yelling. She immediately agreed with him. Then Xia told her that if she swore not to cause him any more trouble and kept everything that happened here a secret, he would let her go right away. The girl immediately agreed and used her magic to cut her finger. She then introduced herself as Xiao Lian and swore on her own blood. The girl was serious. Blood dripped from her finger, and something rather unusual was happening with it. Xia was surprised and wondered who she really was, given that she had made an oath recognized by the heavenly Tao. He remarked that if her wounds were not treated soon, she wouldn't last long. The girl replied that it was no longer his concern and that he could go on his way. Xia, however, picked her up in his arms to help her move around. Xiao Lian tensed up, thinking that he might be about to do something inappropriate, but Xia responded that he was only being benevolent and giving her a chance. He told her to relax, and as part of his plan, he had to hold her to work his magic. The girl felt her meridians being repaired by his spiritualized magic at an incredible rate. Her wounds were healing faster than she had ever heard of. She also began to feel that she was reaching the level of a grotto immortal. She couldn't understand how this was possible and who this guy really was. After some time had passed, the weather was still bright. It turned out that Xia had given her some of his energy, which had helped her recover quickly. The girl thought about how not only had she healed early, but she also had such an easy way to reach the level of a grotto immortal. She didn't understand who this guy was or what had just happened. Additionally, she felt some excitement excitement in her thighs. After a while, Xia began to wake up. He stood up and yawned. As soon as he woke up, he immediately asked the girl if her wounds hurt. The girl remained silent, but Xia realized that she was relieved. He then said that he had to leave, but the girl grabbed him by his clothes. She had one unusual request. She wanted him to hug her a little longer. She clearly wanted it very badly, holding on to his clothes with a sad face. Xia asked if she was confused, wondering if she would have a stroke if she didn't take advantage of someone. The girl shouted back, asking how he could say that now after all he had done. She accused him of wanting to take advantage of her, claiming he didn't care about her at all. Xia replied that they didn't know each other at all and that he wasn't planning to take advantage of her again. Besides, as he realized, she hadn't fulfilled the promise she made recently. The girl responded, explaining that she meant if she had a little more time, she could achieve something more, so she wanted a bit more. But then she interrupted herself, thinking how stupid she sounded and wondering what she was even talking about. Xia looked at her and thought, has she settled down yet? As long as she doesn't throw herself at me like those sisters of hers, it's fine. Otherwise, she'll have to be dealt with. Xia told her that he had already helped her out twice, so maybe it was time to discuss his remuneration. The girl covered her chest and said it wasn't what he meant. Xia was already starting to get annoyed and asked if she was going back to her old ways again. Hadn't he had enough of this yet? Xia reminded her that she had recently mentioned the ancient abode of the Celestials. Did she remember? The girl replied that she did and told him to follow her. After saying that, she immediately turned around and ran in the other direction, telling him to wait for a moment. His strength was only halfway to the level of a bubbling spring, yet he had managed to survive a battle against a warrior with the power of the Grotto of Immortals. Furthermore, his body had extraordinary properties that she had never heard of in her life. The girl thought, could it be that he's some important person from a famous family or a member of a great sect? Xia looked around the tree where the dead ninja was lying for a few minutes until he finally found what he was looking for. He was very happy as he held a small bag with something in it. What I expected from the Xian school, he thought. There are a lot of useful items. The girl stood and looked at Xia in bewilderment, realizing that he was definitely not who she thought he was. After some time, our heroes reached the waterfall. Xia looked around and asked the girl where the abode was. The girl told him to look in the direction where her finger was pointing. If you looked closely, you could see that behind the waterfall, something was glowing. It was some kind of symbol. Xia looked at the symbol and asked what it was. The girl laughed and said that he didn't understand anything, but she didn't know whether that was good or bad. She explained that she was a disciple of the head of the Object Tempering Hall, one of the halls of the Xuan school, and although this imprint was too chaotic, she could recognize the spiritual energy contained in it at a glance. That's why she said he didn't understand anything. However, there were 3 more such spiritual imprints in the vicinity that were meant to open the abode. Besides the one in front of him, they now needed to find the other 3 imprints. Once they did, they would be able to open the passage to the abode. But because of the interference of those people, she hadn't been able to figure out how to break the imprint underwater. After the girl explained everything, Xia immediately started walking toward the symbol. He walked right into the water without any fear of getting wet. The girl didn't understand what he was doing and called out for him to wait. She needed some time to break him properly, but Xia seemed confident in what he was doing. He placed his hand on the symbol, which began to shine and flicker. Xia knew exactly what he needed to do. From his magic ring, he pulled out a sword. The girl was startled and asked what he was doing, but Xia remained silent, focused on his task. He raised the sword high above his head and then stabbed it into the rock from which the waterfall flowed. As soon as he did so, the part of the rock that was shimmering broke off, revealing a spiritual trace. The girl asked him how he knew about spiritual traces. Had he studied them? Xia replied that he hadn't studied anything. He just felt that it was probably the right place. The girl didn't understand what kind of weirdo he was. Xia then mentioned that he possessed the essence of a great jasper immortal, which allowed him to open the spiritual trace, though he didn't fully understand how to use the stone. Upon hearing that he possessed the essence of the great jasper immortal, the girl realized that he had the potential to gain the essence of Sus, also known as the essence of the king of immortals. According to legends, Sus looked down on the existence of people aspiring to become celestials and was endowed with unusual talents in all possible areas. This revelation upset the girl a little. She didn't understand why she had studied so hard if someone like Xia could possess such power without effort. She felt a bit sad, rubbed her eyes, and then thought for a moment. The girl then asked Xia if he wanted to join their Xuan school, one of the 3 greatest sections. She told him that with just his consent, she would inform the master, and he could become a disciple of the inner circle. Xia, however, wasn't interested and immediately refused. He thought to himself, why would I want to be a disciple of the inner circle? It's so much trouble. Instead, he suggested that they dive underwater. As they prepared to dive, Xia asked the girl to give him the drowning amulet as soon as possible. Within moments, they were both underwater. The drowning amulet allowed them to stay submerged for a very long time. After some time, they found gates at the bottom of the water. Our heroes approached the gates to see what lay behind them. They could telepathically communicate at this point, and Xia mentally asked the girl if this was the abode of the senior immortal. In front of them, they saw a silhouette. It must be that immortal. They approached the mysterious figure to get a closer look. As they examined it more closely, they were surprised, even saddened. Right in front of them was a skeleton in a black cloak. Nothing remained but the skeleton and the cloak. Xia thought that this person must have passed away a long time ago, but what was surprising was that his bones were black in color. Had this guy died from poisoning? The girls speculated that whatever it was, they had managed to reach his place. She guessed that this person probably died from the rotten bone poison used by the Nansen region's witchcraft clan. If his cultivation level hadn't been so high, it was likely that his bones would be nothing but ashes by now. Looking closer, the girl noticed a small red dot on the skeleton's chest. She moved closer to examine it and decided to pick it up. It was a small red ball that looked like a pea, but she seemed to understand what it was. She asked Xia, "Is it really an internal elixir?" Xia replied that it was just a frozen, spiritualized essence, not a fully formed flow of emotions. "It must be a pseudo-elixir, or it's called the half-frozen elixir." The girl hesitated before adding. She explained that in their eastern region, only a master of the Xing sect could be compared to this person. Such a great figure was suddenly found in such a humble dwelling. Xia was still pondering the half-frozen elixir. As far as he could remember, this item could only be useful for those who wanted to reach the level of a frozen elixir. The girl then turned to Xia and suggested that she take the elixir while he could take whatever else he found. She asked him how he felt about that arrangement. Xia questioned why she needed the elixir and whether it would be of any use to her. The girl responded that it didn't matter, it would be of use to her in the future. She added that when Xia began exploring the ancient ruins of the School of Pure Manners, the more cards he had in his hand, the better. Besides, with his great Jasper immortal essence, he wouldn't benefit from this item at all. Xia then asked if she was also planning to go to the ancient ruins of the School of Pure Manners. The girl thought that she knew what he was getting at. The Bashuan school was one of the 3 great sects, and of course, there were a set number of seats that were assigned from above. But if Xia agreed to join, she could guarantee there would be a place for him, and the elixir would be hers. Xia looked at her with disdain and told her to forget about it. After he said that, the girl thought that it was perfect. This time, her master would definitely be able to successfully enter the threshold of the frozen elixir level. She thought for a few seconds, then bowed to the skeleton and said, "I am from the younger generation, deeply grateful to the elder for these things that once belonged to him. I hope your soul has found a peaceful resting place, and that nothing troubles you anymore." The girl looked at him and thought that despite his familiarity with etiquette, it was obvious that he had recently been acting like a common pervert, only interested in pawing at girls. Even though it seemed like she took the initiative, she hadn't meant it at all. She was about to leave, but Xia told her to wait. The contents of the ring indicated that the skeleton was a master alchemist. It would probably just turn to ashes. The girl waited a long time while Xia collected all the items. It turned out he needed everything. He collected things to the point where he even considered using the bones. Xia had gathered everything he could and was very happy with all the useful things he had acquired. Meanwhile, the girl was thinking about how this rogue could appear so respectful while being so wasteful. She asked him what he would do if the ancient ruins of the Qifeng sect contained valuable items he couldn't carry away. Xia replied that he had no intention of going there. She was very surprised when he said that, insisting it was such an opportunity. There could be treasure there. He replied that there was no need if life was at stake. The girl agreed, noting that the path to the ruins was too fragile and could only allow followers below the level of Grotto Immortals. For him, a person at the level of Qi retraction, it could still prove to be quite dangerous. Although she admitted that he had a couple of tricks up his sleeve, Xia had just learned some very important news. He could enter a level below the Grotto Immortals. Upon learning this, he immediately decided to go there, thinking it was possible there wouldn't be any disciples with the level of Grotto Immortals capable of killing him. The girl asked if he hadn't just said there might be other dangers there. Xia replied that she shouldn't be afraid, as a real man achieves wealth and honor through risk. He took her hands and said that when the time came, they should support each other. The girl with the pink hair thought this man was too strange, and then she told him that first she should think about how to get permission to explore the ruins, and then she would see. Xia thought that he should find out more about this permit and asked her about it. Xia asked her once again if they would go back together, but the girl said that no one would want to go with him and that she would go alone. Xia didn't press her and just said goodbye. He had also forgotten about his mission to kill the bandits, though he had this nagging feeling that he had forgotten something important. Unable to remember, he decided to forget about it, figuring figuring it was probably something unimportant. Afterward, the girl and Xia swam out of the water to the surface. Some time passed, and the day of the opening of the entrance to the ancient ruined Qifeng sect was approaching. The number of students of the Qifeng sect was increasing day by day. At this time, some students were already practicing hard. In front of Xia's house, there was a sign that read, "No trespassers allowed." A guy with pink hair was thinking that he had heard Xia was the strongest at the Qi level, but he also thought he was pretty good and wanted to test his strength against Xia. One of the big guys grabbed him by the shoulder and told him that he didn't have to wait for Xia. He'd been gone for a long time. Then he asked him how about practicing with his brothers. Meanwhile, some people were approaching the Qifeng sect. A bird that flew by felt a powerful energy. It was their old friends. As soon as the bird saw them, it tried to hide. One of the girls asked why they had to come here. One of the beauties said it was obvious they had something very important to do. On the grounds of the Qifeng sect, the students were minding their own business. Two powerful girls were walking quietly among them, both thinking that this was a miserable place. They agreed on that point. The girl with purple hair said that she didn't want to come here at all. The girl in red replied that if it wasn't for the glory of these ancient ruins, she would never have come here in her whole life. The girl with purple hair asked if it was still 3 days before the opening of the passage. Even considering the preparation time, had they come here too early? At the head of these girls was a third beauty, who acknowledged that it was quite possible they had arrived too early, but then asked if they had any objections to her plan. Apparently, these girls were afraid of their leader, as they immediately said they had no objections, calling her Sister Mentor. The girl with blue eyes then mentioned that she had recently received a rare opportunity, and had just acquired a heavenly essence along with becoming an elder's apprentice. She wondered why, no matter what she did, the two of them always had to open their mouths. The girls immediately bowed to their leader, and said they would never dare to disrespect her, insisting it was just a misunderstanding. Sister Mentor said that it didn't matter now. Regardless, there was still time before the ruins appeared, so she let them do whatever they wanted for now, but ordered them to stay out of her sight. The girls thanked their sister Mentor, knowing they wouldn't be able to enter the ruins anyway. Compared to the ruins, finding the right person, implied to be Xia, would be more useful than dozens of ancient ruins. The girls used their strength to quickly move away from their mentor. As they left, another girl appeared behind the mentor, ready to talk. Sister Mentor instructed her to contact the people from the Shadow sect and have them watch the area. If they observed anything unusual, they should report to her immediately. The girl who was given the order agreed without hesitation. Suddenly, Sister Mentor heard a familiar voice. Turning, she saw a younger girl approaching with a joyful face, calling her Big Sister. The younger sister was clearly very happy to see her and rushed to greet her. Sister was surprised but pleased to see her younger sister. As the younger sister hugged her, the older sister warmly said that she had missed her. The big sister asked the little sister how she was doing at the Qifeng sect. The younger girl replied that there was nothing special. She practiced every day, and most of the people there were just boring, except for one weasel. The older sister didn't know what the younger sister was talking about yet. The younger sister then said she wanted to show her older sister around, but the older sister said she had some things to attend to. At the same time, Xiao was lying on the floor, exhausted, with spirit stone shards scattered around him. It looked like he had reached the 90th Qi stage, but he had used up almost all of his spirit stones. He wondered if the 90th step was his limit, or if it was time to break through the bubbling spring. With his current strength, he might be able to compete with mediocre opponents at the initial stage of the Grotto Immortals. Besides, there wouldn't even be any Grotto Immortal power holders in the ruins. After thinking for a while, Xia decided that he still couldn't relax. To win this game, he still needed to prepare a few trump cards. The people who were practicing nearby were surprised that Xia had finally come out of his house. They noted that right after he returned, he had gone into seclusion and hadn't received anyone until the day of the exam. The girl nearby smiled and noted that Xia seemed to be in a good mood. She then asked if he realized how many times she had been looking for him. Xia just smiled at that and asked her if she had any items that could break through the protection of abodes to enter them directly. The girl replied that of course she had already done that. Whenever she came, he was hardening himself. Otherwise, her foot would have stomped on his face long ago. She complained that she was just a bit short, and as a result, was stuck at the 49th stage of Qi absorption for today. She wondered why her cultivation tool was so stubborn. Naturally, Xia didn't like being referred to as a cultivation tool. She told him to calm down, saying it was his fault. They continued talking, and she suggested exploring the ruins right after the exam. Xia was thinking about that too, but she had a better idea idea. During the ruins exploration, he would stay by her side the whole time, especially after exploring the ruins, as she would have to leave. The girl said this with a serious face but very quietly. Xia asked what she had just said, and she replied that she hadn't said anything. Speaking of which, she mentioned that he still hadn't registered for the exam, so it would be funny if he couldn't get into the research team after all. She added that with his essence, all he needed to do was train hard, and he would definitely be able to show his brilliance at the Chino gatherings. Xia didn't understand what kind of gathering she was talking about. The girl was surprised that he didn't know about it, but then realized she shouldn't have expected anything else from him. She explained that it was a convention where the younger generation of Chino County was evaluated. He would only have to distinguish himself once, and his name would be known throughout the entire Celestial Empire. She also mentioned that she was about to become the first beauty of Chino at the last convention. Xia smiled and said that if he were there, the result would be uncertain. The girl appreciated his confidence, and noted that they hadn't seen each other for a couple of days, but his speech had become much sweeter. She then mentioned that her sister was in the Qingfeng sect, and if Xia performed well in the exam, he might be able to see her. Xia thought about this exam and considered that maybe he should hold back and not draw too much attention to himself. The next events unfolded at the battle during the current exam. Two opponents were already fighting, and the crowd of onlookers was loudly supporting their favorites. This event was organized entirely for the sake of the ancient ruins of the Qingfeng sect and had gathered students from various sects in the great arena. 3 spectators were sitting on a tall structure, from which they could see the entire surroundings. One of them was the junior head of the Xian school, named Zi Dai. He asked a girl named Xuyar who she thought would win. The holy maiden of the Heavenly Thirst school, named Xuyar, responded that the students of her school were really formidable, and he probably hadn't calculated everything yet. The guy laughed and said that was why he was asking for her opinion. His school had already secured quite a few spots among the ruin explorers, so the so-called exam didn't interest him much. However, if she agreed to walk with him at her leisure, then giving them a couple of seats wouldn't be such a problem. Yer looked at the young master and said, "No, I can't be bothered." Her younger sister said that the winner would be announced soon, and they could find out who won. The elder raised his hand and declared, "The winner is Zi Luan." The white-haired guy didn't doubt for a moment that the disciples of his sect were winning without any problems. Sure thought about the fact that even though the fencing technique of Xian's school was perfected, it was worth considering that in the exam, it was impossible to use poisons or hidden weapons. Otherwise, it wouldn't be so easy to determine the outcome of the fights. Suddenly, behind Sher, appeared our familiar girl with pink hair. Sher clearly recognized her and wondered if she wanted to come today as well. Meanwhile, the elder announced the next fight. Chang Shuyuan from the Unbounded Sky School would be fighting against a representative of the School of Pure Morals. The white-haired guy was surprised that the sect of the Immense Heaven School from Xino was also here. He was curious because the Immense Sky Vault School is proficient in defensive techniques, which also possess tremendous counterattacking power. An ordinary person would never be able to deal with them. Fighting them would be a headache. He wondered who the School of Pure Morals had put up against him, and as it turned out, his opponent was Xia. Yer was very surprised at this turn of events, and her sister didn't realize who it was yet. The two rivals entered the ring to fight, and now they would find out who had the better skills. The girl with pink hair recognized the guy they were exploring the underwater ruins with. The elder said that if there was any danger, the fight would be stopped immediately. No deliberate use of lethal techniques was allowed, and then he gave them the signal to start the fight. The white-haired guy noticed that this hero was half a step away from the bubbling spring, but he didn't understand what kind of trash he was dealing with and thought it would be better if Xia left before he got hurt. The older sister noticed the younger sister perk up when she saw Xia enter the ring. Chang, with a red dot on his forehead, turned to Xia and politely introduced himself, asking for Xia's brother to admonish him. Xia did the same. He introduced himself and said that he didn't dare to give any instruction, and asked the brother disciple to be the first to show his courtesy. Then, without thinking for long, Chang said that Xia should apologize to him. The disciple stood there for a while without moving, remaining in the same posture. This went on for some time, and the crowd didn't understand why they were waiting. They began shouting for them to finally start. You realized that this weasel had undoubtedly already seen his opponent's fighting style. Surely, his opponent could only defend himself with it and wasn't a threat in terms of active attack. Guy with with the red dot on his forehead was thinking about what kind of strange opponent he had run into. He was sure he had no idea what to do right now. Xiai meanwhile was standing there picking his nose. People were yelling for him to finally attack. The girl was thinking about how he was such an asshole after all. Suddenly the referee shouted, "What are they doing? If no one attacks during the candle burning time, he will count both of them as defeated." The guy with the red dot on his forehead was worried about why his opponent didn't attack, and even opened up on purpose, so he was surely intentionally provoking him to attack. Then this green-clothed guy thought that the only thing left to do was to lunge. If he even reacted a little, it would still be worth it, and he immediately used the wooden sword shine technique. Xiai easily deflected his attack without any strain at all, and then we noticed that his opponent quickly ran back into a defensive stance. Xiai realized that his opponent had decided to make a false attack to reset the time report again. The people who were watching everything that was going on were already very angry. They didn't understand why they weren't fighting doing some bullshit. If they were still called in the course of the vast skies, more like the course of turtles. Someone demanded their money back and then remembered that he hadn't paid anything and then said, "Give me back my wasted time." The green-clothed man began to worry. This was not what he expected. Is this rascal afraid of mutual defeat? So he dares to pressure him. The elder didn't like to wait long either. He started to say that since he didn't attack either of the opponents, he would award both of them. But suddenly the green-clothed guy opened up and asked the elder to wait. Meanwhile, Xiai caught this moment and immediately attacked his opponent while he was distracted. But the opponent managed to put up his defense. Xiai used a technique called lightning defeat. It was quite a powerful strike, but the opponent managed to hold it back. Now Chang realized that this guy was a body cultivator. Even if he was a body cultivator, he still wouldn't be able to break through his defenses. It should be clarified that we are talking about cultivators who mainly attack with physical attacks and not magic points. Chan was using the great shield of the immense sky. Xiai aimed at his opponent again and was ready to attack. The green-clothed guy was hidden behind his shield, but he didn't expect that our hero would hit so hard that he would break that shield into pieces. And then after the shield shattered, then Chan flew far away into the crowd of people. Xiai smiled and thought it was very easy. His fist was still smoking. The school of Heavenly Sky from Yo is known for its exceptional techniques, which provide a cultivator with the ability to gain strong defense and counterattacking power. In a battle against an opponent of equal level, these techniques almost completely eliminate any blind spots. However, it could be said that Xia had accomplished the impossible. He had emerged victorious against such a defensively skilled opponent. The elder announced that Xia from the School of Pure Morals had won. Xia was pleased that this time he had won using an unexpected technique, and it shouldn't have attracted too much attention, right? The people who witnessed the battle began whispering among themselves, not understanding how this was possible. The defense of the Unbounded Sky School's representatives was as strong as a turtle's shell. Xia didn't realize what he had just done, thinking only that it was good he had defeated the enemy without drawing too much attention, as expected. Meanwhile, on another observation platform, sat the Grand Elder of the School of Pure Morals, named Inu. The elder sister asked the younger sister if she knew where this person had come from. At first, the younger sister looked at her with interest, wanting to tell her everything about this person, but then she hesitated and thought carefully about what to say. The elder sister pondered that considering such a ferocious attack, his strength should be at the final stage of the bubbling spring. But why could she only detect strength half a step away from the bubbling spring? How was he able to achieve this? Suddenly, another woman joined them on the viewing platform. It was Elder Ha from the Heavenly Thirst School. She mentioned that even she couldn't discern Xia's real level. The younger sister, Yu, was happy to see Elder Ha and asked if she had really come to watch as well. The woman sat down next to Yu and said that she couldn't miss it. The heavenly ruins were immeasurably more important than Yu could imagine, but right now she was more interested in what was happening here. The elder sister turned to the elder and asked, "Did you really mean to say that you couldn't see his level of tempering either?" Ha replied that his aura was hard to perceive, and his spiritual powers were too modest in their manifestation. It was impossible to see anything under his false guise, except that he was a formidable figure, and his cultivation had reached such heights that they couldn't fathom. This could only indicate the possession of a special essence. Furthermore, his special essence was extremely rare and powerful. Yu became tense when she heard these words from Elder Ha. The elder sister then remarked that a person at the Chapping level being able to match up against the heavenly grotto level immortal was surprising. Yu seemed restless, as if she wanted to leave immediately. The elder sister asked what was wrong with her, her demeanor indicating that she really knew this person and wondered where he had come from. Both her sister and Elder Ha were curious, and Yu replied that she didn't know either. She thought about how Xia didn't even know about her school. If Xia liked her older sister and the others, they would want to take him back to their school. But at the same time, she didn't understand why she was so concerned about him. The elder sister turned to her younger sister again and asked if they were already together. Yua thought about it, not wanting to engage in paired cultivation herself, then shouted, "No!" She added that her older sister was overthinking it, but she really did know him. His name was Xia, and he was the son of the eldest wife of the leader of some big secret clan from Hanno. His body possessed the essence of Tianen and the extremely powerful essence of a great Jasper immortal. Her elder sister and elder Ha were surprised by this information. Yua confirmed that it was all true, saying that Xia's clan had strong warriors protecting him from the shadows, otherwise she would have eaten him alive by now. Yua realized she was talking nonsense but was only doing so to protect the older apprentice. The elder sister asked her younger sister if they really hadn't paired with him. Yua replied that of course not. At most, she had brushed against him a little, and that was it. Elder Ha smiled, thinking about how great it was to be young. Yua continued, saying that was why she felt they shouldn't make any rash moves toward him. The elder sister said she would take that into consideration, while Elder Ha remained silent. Meanwhile, the competition continued, with more and more students coming out to fight. Xia also successfully made it into the top 20, fighting quite well. But to earn the right to enter the ruins, he needed to make it into the top 10. The elder announced that the battle to get into the top 10 would begin in 2 hours, and the place of the battle would be moved to the top of the mountain, where a special ring had already been prepared. Xia stood in front of a huge stone slab and thought to himself, "Is this really mirage?" But then he realized it wasn't. It looked like the ruins of the School of Pure Morals. There was some writing on the stone slab that hung in the air. Could it be that he had already seen it in the forbidden section of the Great Void? The elder then announced that the students in the top 10 would draw lots to determine their opponents for the final battle. Xia drew his number and looked to see who he would be fighting. As it turned out, his opponent was a white-haired guy he had seen before. The guy was clutching his number and was clearly not happy to see Xia again. Xia only smiled when he saw who he was going to fight. Di Tianming always thought that he was special. He often placed himself above others, being in the hereditary lineage of the Zishan school, even if he was a humble distant relative. At least in a place as insignificant as the School of Pure Morals, he believed he should originally be among the very best. But from that day onwards, everything changed. As soon as the white-haired guy saw his opponent, he angrily declared that this time he would definitely chop him into 1,000 pieces. Xia remembered how their previous fight had gone. It was as strange as possible. Xia covered his chest and said not to do it again. He wasn't interested in such matters. She said not to even dare bring it up. The people around them were shouting that this was a disciple of Z who couldn't beat his opponent with the power of absorbing qi. Someone even said that he was just a boy. Su shouted that it was all Xia's fault, and now that he didn't need to suppress his strength, would he also save him? Our hero completely ignored him and just waited for the battle to be announced. The white-haired guy was furious that he was being treated so carelessly. The elder declared that the battle to get into the top 10 was starting. He asked the contestants who drew lots with the first number to come to the arena. The white-haired guy said that now Xia should prepare to be trampled like an ant. Xia just stuck out his tongue at him. Finally, the elder announced a fight between Zi Tianming from the Zishan school and Xia from the Pure Morals school. As soon as the fight was announced, the white-haired guy immediately drew his sword and rushed toward his opponent with fury. He used an incredibly powerful strike with his sword, which left behind a purple glow from the east, but Xia dodged very quickly. Xia remarked that his opponent was very assertive and they had just started. He added that Z needed to talk less. Even now, he was letting himself get cocky. Z immediately attacked Xia with several strikes, but Xia kept dodging effortlessly. Z was furious. His eyes were as red as an enraged bull. While dodging the attacks, Xia thought that he had seen this purple glow from the east so many times before. The students of the Zishan school used this technique so often that even Xia was now better at it than Zi Tianming. Was Z really such an amateur? Suddenly, Z decided to use one of his most powerful attacks. He claimed that this was the opportunity he had been waiting for. Swords appeared all around him, ready to fuse into his opponent's body. Z looked at Xia with a crazed expression and shouted for him to finally die, pointing all his swords at him. Xia saw an unbelievable number of sharp blades coming at him, ready to pierce his body, but strangely enough, he remained completely calm. He realized what this technique was. In his eyes, it was absolutely uncomplicated. Xia concentrated, applied the levitation technique, and immediately flew into the sky. However, the swords followed him, and it looked very dangerous. Each blade was aimed to pierce the person they were chasing. Xia had to dodge skillfully as the elder watched. The elder was surprised to see that Xia was now using their flow technique, the 4 steps of pure wind. He thought it was impossible. Xia had only recently joined their school, and yet he had already advanced so far. After a while, when the enemy's magic wore off, our hero descended to the ground. Xia thought that this technique was pretty good and that he had almost mastered it perfectly, but his clothes were a little dirty. It would be good if Xi used the same technique again. Meanwhile, the white-haired guy couldn't understand how this could be. He was using a technique from the Zishan school, one that was only passed down through direct hereditary lineage. Teacher Z was watching all this and wondered how much more Zi Tianming could embarrass himself. His opponent hadn't even gotten a single scratch. Could this Xia really be someone from a big house like Hongsu, where ancient body tempering techniques were kept? Z was delighted every time Xia managed to dodge an attack or win. Suddenly, Z began to behave very strangely, first screaming, then laughing. His eyes started to glaze over quickly, and Xia didn't understand what was happening. The white-haired guy started laughing loudly, and Xia wondered if he had lost his mind. It wouldn't be surprising, given how things were going. Zi's face turned red, and he said that only he was worthy of defeating Xia. The maddened guy started talking nonsense, claiming that after defeating his opponent, he could do whatever he wanted to him. Xia asked, "Is that how the rules work? Is the effect of that elixir still active?" Xia slapped his opponent on the cheek to try to wake him up. Xi said that since that day, he had thought every minute about how to make Xia taste the bitterness of defeat. It consumed his every hour and minute. All his thoughts were directed only at Xia. The white-haired guy clutched his cheek, his gaze insane. He took out some small balls and said that he had been waiting for this day for a long time. The elders saw that Xi was using something forbidden and raised their hands, commanding him to stop. But Xi had already thrown the weapon at Xia. Our hero didn't know what it was yet, but he knew it could kill him if he didn't defend himself. So, he immediately covered his face with his hands to repel the attack. As soon as the balls touched Xia's body, they exploded. The explosion was so powerful that it enveloped the entire arena and even more. When the smoke cleared, Xi was surprised and disappointed. Sadness and longing appeared on his face. Meanwhile, Xia just coughed and said it was very fortunate that he had reacted quickly. The people who saw this were very shocked. Immediately, the referee ran into the arena and declared that Zi Tianming had broken the rules by using concealed weapons. Therefore, the fight was won by Xia. But before the elder could officially declare it, someone interrupted and asked him to wait. It was Master Zi, who said that Xia was the first to leave the arena, and according to the rules, he was the one who should be defeated. He said that he thought everyone had noticed that before the explosion happened, Xia had fallen outside the arena, which is why he had lost, in this teacher's opinion. The elder realized that it was completely unfair, but according to the rules, if that was really the case, then Zi had indeed won. Everyone was silent, looking at each other, unsure of where the truth lay. Xia realized that the truth was on his side, but he didn't want to create unnecessary complications. He was only interested in one thing right now. Why were all the people from the Zishan school so nasty? Xia said that it was just a bluff and that his opponent had immediately panicked in fear. "Is such a coward worthy of standing here?" he questioned. The teacher then began to press the elder, asking why he hadn't awarded Zi the victory yet and if he was going to keep delaying the other participants' fights. The elder was now very worried because the school of pure morals could win today. His hands started to shake, but he announced that the winner was Zi. The elder had a lot of faith in Xia and believed that the school had gotten to the point where everyone here considered them as mere servants. But suddenly, a girl with pink hair asked everyone to wait. She took a piece of shrapnel from the bombs and said that based on the traces of destruction, as well as the smoke and odors, one could draw a conclusion. She, being a personal disciple of the Shuang School's item tempering head, could guarantee the following. The item that Zi Tianming had just used was comparable to the thunder bombs of immortals. If Xia hadn't managed to dodge in time, there would have been many years waiting for him. Zi Tianming had broken the rules against using hidden weapons. Therefore, the girl felt that he should be the one to be defeated. Teacher Zi hesitated for a few seconds and then agreed with the girl. He said that if the Shuang School's disciple had fallen that way, then they would consider the Zishan School to have lost. After hearing this, the elder couldn't believe his ears. After all, this person would definitely not back down. Immediately after that, the elder announced that the winner was a member of the Hongsu sect named Xia. What the elder said was very strange to Xia. He turned around and looked at the people, not understanding who these Hongsu people were. Others were also surprised to find out that he was a disciple of Hongsu and also from the secret sect. Is he so strong? Was his chi level cultivation just a cover? Teacher Zi was thinking that Hongsu was still within the sphere of influence of the Zishan school. Ashamed that he had lost so much face in front of these people, he called over one guy and asked him what he could do for him. The white-haired master told his servant to go and invite Xuan here. He also instructed the servant to say that the boy claimed he would kidnap her her and make her his junior wife. The boy was clearly not happy about delivering such a message, but the master shouted for him to quickly carry out the order. The servant immediately went to do so, and the white-haired master just wanted to hurt Xia. Meanwhile, Xia stood in the arena as everyone cheered for him, declaring him the winner. Immediately, a muscular guy ran up to him, hugged him, and said that Xia was very tough and that worthless Z couldn't beat him even with his tricks. Xia replied that he was just a bit lucky, then asked the big guy if he had recovered from his injury. A lot of people surrounded Xia, wanting to befriend him. Some asked for his autograph, and some wanted to become his student. They were impressed by how easily he had defeated the guy from the Zishan school. Through this crowd of Xia's fans, a gray-haired man with a mustache was trying to get through. Xia noticed this elder, and everyone who saw him also bowed their heads in respect. The gray-haired elder told Xia to follow him. Xia asked if they were going to have a sword fight. After a while, the mustachioed master led Xia to a deserted mountain peak. The elder was standing there, deep in thought. Xia asked the elder what he wanted from him and mentioned something about the predecessor of the school of pure morals. Xia didn't know if the elder had heard of it, but he wondered why this area was called Xingyun and not Xingyun. The elder thought for a moment and said that he could think of a few reasons. Xia still didn't understand why the elder had called him, so he asked again. The elder looked at Xia carefully and said that he had to ask him for a favor. Xia didn't understand what the elder was saying, and for a few seconds, they stood in complete silence. The elder then said that he missed the Qing'an school's once boundless landscape, which had now fallen into a similar decay. Not only had they lost their glory, but it had also gotten to the point where they couldn't maintain even basic justice. How shameful this state of affairs was. The old man turned to Xia and said that although Xia was a person from Hongsu, he still wanted to bring about change. Xia raised his hands and told the elder that he had already taken care of him enough. Xia still didn't understand why he suddenly became associated with Hongsu. He thought that it was quite possible that Yue had worked on it. The elder looked at Xia carefully and said that he was strong, honest, and knew etiquette. He really wasn't wrong about it. The other students in the school absolutely couldn't compare to him. Xia said that the elder was praising him too much. Meanwhile, the old man took out maps of the Pure Manners ruins, as well as treasure information, and decided to give them to Xia, hoping that Xia would find a good use for them. Xia didn't expect such a turn of events. He didn't even know what to say. The elder said that if he could find the lost techniques of the Qing'an school there, it would be the highest reward for him. He gave Xia the map and said that if he didn't find anything, then it wasn't meant to be. The old man turned around and left. Xia looked at the map and thought that this was the fate condemned in the school of pure morals. Following the elder, the boy thanked him and said that he would never let him down. The following events unfolded in the tournament arena. The elder with the mustache was talking to Teacher Z. The elder told him that the next fight would be between a representative of the Ascension School, Yuning, and Xian from the Zishan School. Teacher Z said that Xian suddenly had some urgent matters, so the Zishan School wanted to replace the student. The elder agreed, saying it was acceptable as long as the strength of the replacement didn't exceed the MO Immortal stage. Yuning would then fight a representative of the Zishan School named Su Shuang. Everyone clapped their hands, marveling at the beauty of this girl, Su Shuang. She was also surprised and looked at Xia very carefully before abruptly averting her gaze and raising her head proudly. Xia thought that she had just looked at him, but he had never seen her before. In the end, the two opponents walked out, facing each other. The referee announced the start of the fight. Xia decided to put these thoughts aside for now and just watch the competition. He had also heard that the Yuning Ascension School was similar to the Dark School of Heaven's Thirst, except that it was all men. Su Shuang's opponent was a gray-haired guy who said that he was her humble servant, Yuning. He also mentioned that she was quite pretty and asked if she was interested in paired cultivation. The girl immediately raised her sword and told the guy to talk less, asking if he was going to fight or not. This strange guy stuck out his tongue and asked her if she was really capable of hitting his charming face. Xia, watching this strange guy, almost threw up and even got dizzy. Even so, one muscular student shouted that the brat was so cute. The girl, who was about to fight, paused to think. It seemed like it was the effect of the charm technique. The gray-haired guy said that they didn't need to beat and kill each other. They'd better have a good time. However, the guy's charms didn't seem to work on her. She just smiled and said, "One hand?" The enemy didn't understand what she was talking about and asked her which hand she meant. It turned out that the girl had cut off his arm with one swing of her sword. The guy fell to the floor, writhing in pain. He did not expect such a turn of events and called the girl bad names, asking how she dared to do that. The girl wasn't much of a wordsmith and simply said, "One head," meaning that she was about to cut off his head. The guy immediately shouted that he was admitting defeat and begged her not to kill him. The judge raised his hand and was ready to announce the winner, but the girl suddenly stopped him. She said that the purpose of this competition was to determine the strongest 10 participants. participants. Everyone looked on in amazement, wondering if she was really that strong. The girl then suggested that to save time, the remaining contestants should enter the arena all at once. There is a certain hierarchy of disciples. At the very bottom are the servants, above them is the outer circle, followed by the inner circle, then the main disciples, and at the very top are the personal disciples, starting from the lower levels, which consist of the servants, outer circle disciples, inner circle disciples, main disciples, and personal disciples. This time, Su Shuang is a personal disciple of the Zishan school. Moreover, she possesses a striking innate talent and profound cultivation. The muscular guy who saw that cute little brother being defeated started crying. Teacher Z thought to himself that this wasn't bad and let this girl continue as she was. The more people she pissed off, the better. It was actually quite disrespectful when she told everyone to come out to fight against her. A lot of people got angry, but they couldn't let her trample on their dignity. The bald muscular guy clapped Xia on the back and said they needed to get revenge together to climb up. Xia said he didn't want to go there, but still, he would have to fight her. He took out his mighty weapon and went to the arena. A lot of guys had already entered the arena to fight this cheeky girl. They were going to bring her down from heaven to earth. Xia noticed there were already so many disciples there, so he was just going to stand aside for now. Once they all came out, the girl immediately drew her sword from its sheath. Immediately after she took it out, she put it into practice and attacked all of her opponents. It was a purple glow technique from the east, and with a few movements of her sword, she slew the entire crowd of furious participants. Xia realized that it was a slash of purple radiance and began to worry because of such power. The strength of her attack was many times greater than the one issued by Zi Tianming. Now, this powerful girl turned to Xia and asked, "Is your name really Xia?" The guy remained silent, not knowing what to say. He was now quite nervous. The girl said, "What else could be expected from a man capable of saying such nasty things? Even the weapon is vulgar." Xia looked at his weapon and thought, "What's wrong with this baton? It's large, hard, and also has solid power. It's a pretty good weapon." He asked her if she had thought about how the baton would feel from her unwarranted insults. Then he thought about what she had just said, that he had supposedly said some nasty things. The girl raised her sword and said he was a womanizer, and today she would surely bring their battle to an end. Xia shrugged and said she won, and that he was just giving up. The guy threw his baton on the floor, turned around, and thought of leaving. He realized that he wasn't even sure if he could win the battle against this crazy lady. The elder immediately declared Su Shuang the winner. Xia thought that the last thing he needed right now was to let others discover his power, but suddenly he saw a purple barrier standing right in front of him. The girl had applied a barrier. She said that he might as well give up hope of escaping. Xia realized that if she had applied this barrier, then he would probably still have to fight her. Another elder with a mustache raised his hand, wanting to stop this girl, but she glared menacingly at the old man and said that this was just a matter between her and Hong Su. In the school of pure morals, one did not go back on their word. She thought about the fact that using a concealed weapon earlier had been a bit reckless of her, but now she needed to win as quickly as possible. She immediately grabbed her sword and rushed at Xia, shouting that he dared not do whatever he wanted, relying on Hong Su's influence. At the very least, he should have the courage to answer for his actions. Was he still not going to retract his words? Xia blocked her attack and asked, "What's the matter anyway? And what words are you talking about, sister?" Then he decided to attack her, but she quickly dodged. He noticed that she had a very powerful attack. Despite being at the middle stage of the bubbling spring, her strength and speed clearly surpassed the peak of the bubbling spring. He wondered, is she the real protagonist? The girl rushed at Xia with her sword, screaming for him to show what he could do. They would find out how much he could withstand. Xia once again repelled her attacks with his strange weapon, thinking that things were bad. He didn't even have the option to intentionally lose. He had to try to find her weakness. But the guy seemed to have noticed something. He was full of energy, but the girl looked like she was a bit tired. Now he realized that it seemed the longer the fight dragged on, the more exhausted she would become. The seals she had applied recently had taken a lot of her strength. In addition, he evaluated her movement technique. It seemed that in close combat, her skill was far from perfect. Xia bounced back first and had already formulated a plan to defeat her. He looked at the girl and confidently said that she could consider herself already defeated. The girl, realizing she needed to speed up her efforts, immediately applied a technique called endless purple aspirations. An unbelievably large number of energy spheres began forming, poised to smash into Xiao's body. However, he was already prepared. With no emotion on his face, he quickly applied a technique that allowed him to fly and dodge dodge those energy spheres. He turned to the girl and asked, "Have you ever heard of the palm technique of sudden appearance? Today, I'm going to introduce it to you. You'll learn who the true fire principle really is." A small magic sphere formed in his hand and rapidly began to grow. This was the dark stage fire technique, the young king's fire palm. It was quite a powerful force, and at this point, the girl tensed up, not expecting Xia to have such abilities. Xia thought that this move should finally determine the outcome of the battle. He unleashed his power, and it collided with the girl's energy, resulting in unexpected consequences. Xia felt great pain, and blood began to flow from his mouth. He coughed up the blood, and at that same moment, the girl also felt pain. The blood splattered so far that some got into the girl's mouth, and she accidentally swallowed it. Everyone watching this event was incredibly surprised. The arrogant teacher who had antagonized his student against Xia sat there, smiling. Both fighters had suffered serious damage from such a clash of powerful forces. Yue was very scared for Xia, her older sister having given her all this time to support her sibling. Yue had been worried about her senior student the whole time and prayed for his victory. Even though Xia took damage, he still landed on his feet like a cat. He hadn't really expected what was going to happen next. He thought the fight would end there. Though the girl had been thrown far away, she still managed to stay on her feet. Xia got angry and said that this time, he could admit defeat. The girl was silent for a few seconds, then clenched her fist and said, "No." She turned around and started to walk away, saying that he had won this battle. Xia didn't understand what had just happened, but he thought she was a very strange person. Meanwhile, something very unusual was happening to the girl. She had never felt anything like this before and didn't understand what was causing it. Could it be because she had just swallowed a drop of his blood? For some reason, her restraint suddenly became looser, and more importantly, her heart clenched very tightly. The white-haired teacher didn't understand why she didn't fight to the death. Couldn't she push a little harder and kill him? The muscular guys talked about how tough Xia's brother was. Xia replied that he was just lucky, that's all. A gray-haired old man with a mustache was watching all of this. He noticed the muscular guy trying to kiss Xia and thought to himself that his school of pure manners was really incompetent and unable to support such a genius. The elder turned to the winner, wanting to say something to him, but Xia was busy dealing with the strange muscular guys and needed help calming them down. After the winner was announced and everyone found out that the winner was Xia, the Hongo representative, a lot of people immediately ran over to him. Yue was very happy that Xia had won, exclaiming that it was really great. Then, the elder raised his hand and announced that the way to the ruins would be open in 2 hours. Additionally, he expressed his hope that while exploring the ruins, if they came across the disciples of his sect, they would at least spare their lives as a favor to him. The white-haired man bowed his head before these people. The others didn't understand what he was saying. How could he still call himself an elder? What a shame it was to ask such a thing in his position. His disciples felt annoyed when the elder said those words. Finally, 2 hours passed, and everyone was ready to rush into the ruins. If you're excited for the next part, leave a comment, and I'll do my best to bring it to you as soon as possible.